Good evening, everybody. Welcome to DraftKings Pro Picks Night presented by H&M's Spring/Summer Menswear Collection, available in store and online now at hm.com. As you can see by how amazing we look, oh my, just incredible. Run, do not walk to get yourself some fresh fits. You can stare at our amazing outfits for the next 2 hours while we analyze all the picks that come in on draft night. As you can see, I'm joined in studio by Julian, Edlow, and Steve Buchanan. Happy to be here, aren't you guys?
It's draft night. It's going to be wild already.
This is a wild start to the draft. We haven't seen one like this in a while with so many mysteries.
Yeah, and you guys look mysteriously cool in your outfits.
Thanks,
all
you too.
right, we have Femi Abebefe and Michael Lombardi in the VSiN South Point studio, and the one and only Johnny Avello in the midst of it all on the floor in Vegas. And last but not least, we have a rowdy crew down the hallway. We put him in a room way down there. Emerson Lotzia holding court with both Golics and the one and only Charlotte Wilder. Guys, seems like it's probably pretty crazy down there.
Oh, yeah. Here we are having the time of our lives. How's everyone feeling? Everyone looks really good.
I feel really good.
I've never seen you look this good.
I feel good. It's light. It's especially good because we're in a hot room. You're smoldering over there. Dad has slaughtered hundreds of trees to make this draft prep happen.
I am very happy that someone finally made him look good. I mean, because
you guys match too. There's some coordination.
It's cool because we're father and son, so that kind of works.
Yeah, well, your faces match too.
Well, except for the top of the head.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I wasn't going to say it.
If H&M could develop a Lego hair feature, I would be really appreciative, and I would give them all of my dollars, and you should anyway.
It's going to be a wild night, huh? I mean, like a lot of quarterback intrigue here. What are your expectations tonight, Charlotte?
I just hope that we get weird trades.
Let's go.
I love a trade.
That was your bold prediction, right?
Yeah, which is not really, it's sort of a cop-out,
Yeah.
but predicting anything is, but I think that if we get the quarterbacks out of the way at the top and then some weird trades, or not even the quarterbacks out of the way, really.
But I think those go hand in hand,
Yeah.
right? Like, Dad, you've covered the draft for years and years now. All the best years where the most action happen is when you have quarterbacks as the driver. It's the most valuable commodity in sports. We've got 4, maybe 5 guys that are going to find their way into the first round, and then a run on edge rushers, some tackles, all of which can make people a little wonky once the thirst for the quarterbacks goes too far.
I do think we get 5 in, actually. I think Hendon Hooker gets in the back of the first round.
Because 4.5 is the total set on the DK Sportsbook right now.
I'm going to go over on that one. But
nice.
What always is stuck in my head, maybe it's my hate for quarterbacks, is, as a former D lineman, is the fact that there's at least 4 that are going to be taken, and history says 2 are going to bust.
Yep.
So, I mean, there are 4 teams that are going to take these 4 top quarterbacks thinking they have the quarterback of their future, and we have a lot of sampling of this, that 2 are going to bust, which is tough.
Yeah, and we can all agree it's going to be Bryce Young at 1. Then after that, there's just a lot of question marks. And you took Bryce Young in our mock draft yesterday.
He seems to be the one certain thing right now. I said we should get to open 1 draft pick early in the morning of draft day, like the night before Christmas. Make it anywhere. But in this case, Bryce Young has been the gift given to us for the last couple weeks. And then the Houston Texans, that 2-3-4, once you get to them, the Cardinals at 3, and the Indianapolis Colts at 4, they hold all the keys because we've seen so much conversation around C.J. Stroud that seems hell-bent on trying to drive down his value to maybe prevent teams from getting froggy and trading up. A team like Vegas waiting in the wings, the Tennessee Titans who might be ready to finally move on. All those are in play when you've got this mystery around C.J. Stroud and what might happen at 2.
Bryce Young is going first. I would take C.J. Stroud. He's a top quarterback for me, but him and Bryce are right there. But then we all go to 2, and is Houston really considering not taking a quarterback when they need a quarterback? Yeah. Now, they need a lot of things, but, boy, how do you not take one there? And then maybe the first trade area is Arizona. Do they go for the high-profile edge rusher, say we need more assets, so let's drop back?
Well, I think what we need, though, is a camera on Houston. I need a watch party in Houston if they don't take a quarterback.
Yeah.
I want to see those
they
fans.
They burn to the ground tonight.
Yeah, you never know. You never know.
Listen, because one of the storylines could end up being where some of the biggest names might tumble if they don't come off the board early, and we kind of saw that in years past. One example, Lamar Jackson. And today, real quick, before we toss it out to our friends at VSiN out in Vegas, Lamar Jackson signing the 5-year extension. So our long national nightmare here is over. He has just become the richest quarterback, the richest player in NFL history here. Mike, Why did the dam finally break today?
The old phrase, deadlines drive results. The draft was a big deadline. And if you were going to be one of the teams that potentially jumped in on him, you were going to want to find out now. But I think more than anything, Jalen Hurts.
Exactly.
Like what Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles did made Baltimore rightly consider, oh my God, Joe Burrow's going to get signed soon, Justin Herbert's going to get signed soon, and the last thing we want is those deals driving up this price even more.
So at some point, Lamar knew he wasn't going to get the fully guaranteed deal.
Probably
it's not
the Hurts contract.
If it doesn't happen with Burrow, it's not going to happen. What I had said earlier is that guaranteed money, of which Hurts got 180, we see Lamar got 185, Herbert and Burrow, that may get up to 2 as far as the guaranteed with injury. So what did Lamar get actually? So he got 5 more guaranteed than Jalen Hurts and 5 more overall. But remember, his contract's a year less. He signed a 5-year deal, and that starts now. Jalen's was an extension. So Jalen has 1 more year. And so he actually has 6 years. So Lamar signed a little after Jalen, could hit free agency before Jalen Hurts.
So he's 26 years old.
Yeah.
How about this, Charlotte? Agent fees are like between like 1% and 3%. Everyone knows he doesn't have an agent. So by negotiating it himself, he saved between $2.6 million and $7.8 million in agent fees. That's pretty
honestly,
legendary.
that was my first thought when I saw that the deal had gotten done and he's sitting there and he's talking about, a lot of back and forth. I was like, oh my God, this guy's got to go into law after football. Like he's got to be an agent for other people, because the fact that he did this himself, I think, is truly remarkable.
Come on, do the math. How much is he saving in 3%?
$5.4 million.
That's at one. That's 180.
That was a number you threw yesterday.
Now
I
it's
can't
185,
do that.
so you got to add another 150,000 to it.
All right, so
My dad loves flexing mental math on everyone. Congratulations to
We
Lamar
get it,
for
man.
getting it
You're
done.
good at
Yes,
numbers.
I agree.
So after we have C.J. Stroud as the favorite here, guys and gal, to be the second quarterback taken at minus 300. Levis next up at plus 300, and Richardson at plus like 600. Mr. Golic, who would you put your money on to be the second quarterback off the board?
Oh, C.J. Stroud,
Okay.
for sure. And then my order would have been Stroud first, Bryce, but it's not what I want. It's what the teams want. They're not listening to me. They should.
They might be.
So Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud. Then I think it's Anthony Richardson, though you do hear the Colts do like Levis. But I think Richardson goes before Levis. I think he's fourth. What do you think?
I would agree. I think there's too much talent there to pass up. Cleaner than most people have given him credit for, all those things. But a lot of smoke around Levis. A lot of smoke right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do you feel like Josh Allen, the way that he developed here, Charlotte, like that's playing a role in guys like Levis and guys like Richardson who have the physical tools but may still have some question marks surrounding them?
Absolutely. Their hands measure up great at the
Yeah.
combine.
That's big.
That's
Unlike
all
Kenny
teams
Pickett.
want.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Big ol' confirmed. I shook Will Levis's hand during this offseason around the Super Bowl time. Big old bear paws on him. He's
and
like
that's
a
all
large
a
puppy.
team needs. That's all a team
It's amazing
needs.
what we look at, isn't it? I mean,
truly is.
seriously. Hand size and then shorts and a T-shirt. Oh, my God, look what they did. Give me a
Too jacked to play quarterback. Good problem to have.
Well,
Just like me. Just like me.
Former NFL general manager Michael Lombardi knows a thing or two about looking at guys' hands when it comes to the draft. So he's out in Vegas now with our dude Femi. You guys take it away.
I'm glad that we could be a part of this
I
fun
mean, I want to
shindig
stay
here.
away as much as possible, because he has a way of kind of getting on me a little bit. So I need to stay away from him. I'm sure he's going to have a lot of overreactions to the pick. I'm sure he'll have that. It looks good though tonight, doesn't he? With his H&M
They all
wardrobe?
look good with the H&M
really
gear.
looks good. I mean, you
we
gotta
look
love
good
that.
though too.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So do you.
Yeah,
we
both-
color coordinated here
Both
today.
of us with our fresh haircuts here on draft day. But let's talk about draft day. They're finally, Michael, going to get this thing going. I think we're at 5:08 West Coast time here.
We still haven't started the clock yet.
We haven't started the
clock yet. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I was talking to a couple guys in the league today that the Panthers are not going to, they're going to wait. They're building this drama up. I think they really enjoy no one knowing what the pick is. I mean, we all know it's Bryce Young. But, I mean, why do we have to wait another 10 minutes?
And allow us to victory lap here. I mean, the GM Shuffle podcast, it was in early March when I asked you, I said, what are the Panthers going to do? Is it Stroud? Is it Young? And you were very confident in Bryce Young. You helped me make some money, as what we're presuming here. So
I haven't gotten a tip, but thank you very much.
Well, let's have Roger Goodell say Bryce Young's name first before I start tipping you. You never know what could happen in an NFL draft. We saw the NBA draft, but it looks like it's going to be Bryce Young, man. What kind of player are the Panthers getting here?
I really think the Panthers have a chance to really to ascend. I mean, I love Bryce Young. And you know where I started on Bryce Young with the 5'10" element. But I think he's got great instincts. He's got that memory that great players have. He can see what happened on the field. And this Carolina team is not bad. I mean, they're not a talent-deficient team like a typical first pick in the draft. They gave up a ton of draft picks. They've got a good offensive line. Miles Sanders will be a good running back. They need to add some receivers, which I think they can. Defensively, if they get somebody opposite of Brian Burns with Derrick Brown inside, they've got a chance to be really good. Look, they were DJ Moore keeping his helmet on. They were a kicker making an extra point. They were J.C. Horn not getting hurt in the Tampa game, and Mike Williams goes crazy for 3 touchdowns. So I think Bryce Young makes them, to me, one of the better teams in the South if he plays within himself, which I'm pretty sure he will.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for Bryce Young. He's about to hear his name called as the first overall pick. An exciting time for the teams as well, Michael. You've been in this position in the war room, draft about to get started here. What is this like?
We just started the clock.
Yeah, we just started the clock. Okay, we have started. But what is this moment like right now? What's going on in that Houston war room where presumably they are on the clock here knowing that Bryce Young's going to Carolina?
Well, I mean, everybody in the league knows Bryce Young's going here. So this is a formality, right? I think that everybody that I talked to before we came here thinks Will Anderson's going too. The betting market doesn't agree with that. And I've been around this enough to know the betting market gets really good information. So, will C.J. Stroud go too? I don't know. I mean, I was told, write it down, book it, Will Anderson's going too. But then when I got here, the betting market's gone crazy for C.J. Stroud. So I'm not to the point where I think my information is better than the betting market, because I've seen this happen. And would C.J. Stroud be the second pick? We'll see. I think ultimately the third pick, if Stroud goes 2, I think the Cardinals might be locked in at 3, because we know Tennessee wants to trade up, maybe, to get to the third pick to pick Stroud. But when Stroud comes off the board, that trade could fall apart.
And to your point, over at DraftKings Sportsbook, C.J. Stroud closed minus 2,500 to be the number 2 overall pick.
But
Will Anderson 10-1.
This morning on GM Shuffle, on the show today, Will Anderson was going crazy with all the picks, right? I mean, Will Anderson was their prohibitive favor, but something shifted in the afternoon. Now, could Cal McNair come in and say, look, I want to pick a quarterback? I don't put anything past any of that. I mean, I think when they need a quarterback, and I was told they're going to pick a quarterback last night. This morning, I heard it was going to be Will. I mean, I've heard everything, right? I've heard everything.
We haven't had a draft day trade inside the top 10 for 4 years. Do we have one tonight? Any trade rumors near the top of the board?
Well, it's going to be interesting what Seattle does, right? Seattle's sitting there at 5. John Schneider's made 34 trades in his career. He's traded up 20. He's traded down 20 times. He's traded up 11. Does he move out of 5 because he's worried about Carter? I don't think so. I think, to me, all the teams picking from Schneider 5 back hope that the quarterbacks all go, because it gives them a defensive player. And in this draft, the defensive players are probably the better ones.
All right. Well, the Carolina Panthers now on the clock. 2 minutes in.
7:40 to go.
8 to go. Yeah. It's a lot that we got going on here. We're going to be hanging tight with you guys here, holding it down in Las Vegas. Let's talk back to Jessie over in Studio A out in Boston.
Back here on DraftKings Pro Picks Night, presented by H&M Spring/Summer Menswear Collection, available right now in store and online at hm.com. My shirt is buttery soft, so not only do I look incredible, I also feel incredible. I know you guys feel incredible too. Guys, obviously, it's going to be Bryce Young at 1. We've talked about this. We've talked it to death. But let's talk about the fantasy impact for a quarterback going to Carolina. It's a unique situation because he's not going to a terrible team here.
Yeah, I mean, with Bryce Young, what I'm most impressed by with him, he's obviously played with some really good NFL-caliber receivers at Alabama, but last year he didn't. Alabama didn't have the weapons last year, and Bryce Young still played really, really well. I know it wasn't a classic Alabama national championship team, but Bryce Young did his thing with those guys that he had. Now, obviously, part of the trade for Carolina to move here, DJ Moore, one of the top weapons there, goes to Chicago. So they're going to have to build some weapons around him. But enough of the size talk. Like, we've seen what he can do out on the field in the SEC. He's evasive, he's quick, he's slippery, and he's real good throwing the ball. So I don't know what he's going to be right away, but if they can protect him by the time they get weapons around him, I'm a big Bryce Young fan.
And not only that, it's like it just finally ends this like carousel of characters that they've had under center for the past 3 years now. I feel like it's been for Carolina. So this is obviously their biggest need. They're addressing that big need, but just gives just solidifies that position that has just been in flux for so long, and that's really what this franchise needs to move forward and start building towards the future.
And like nearly all the recent QBs in past years have been going to teams with no more than 3 wins in the previous season. So it's definitely a unique situation, especially because the NFC South was a mess last year. Yeah. Nobody had a winning record. So, I mean, what's the chance here that he goes in and makes an impact? He could be the first rookie QB to lead his team to a division title here. What do we think?
I mean, just based on
talent,
based on talent alone, he would probably automatically be the most talented quarterback in that division when he enters at this point. So it's going to be
cars, and I mean that's a little bit of a slight to the New Orleans Saints' new quarterback. No.
Yeah.
Tom Brady. Put it this way: Tom Brady exiting that division, and they were division winners at under 500 last year, right? If I'm not mistaken. Like, yes, it opens up a door for the Panthers if Bryce Young can be really good right away. But if we're looking at this from a betting market, Saints to win that division feels like they have the most talent at the moment.
Well, we've also obviously had a lot of time since the college football season ended to talk about this, and Bryce Young's odds have gone all over the place here.
Yeah, that's a roller coaster right there.
Yeah, talk to me about that movement. What was going on?
This is betting drafts. Drafts are information-based markets. There are no backdoor covers. There is no, my Boston Celtics played on Tuesday night. They were up 12 with 4 minutes left at home. Hawks were 25-1 on the money line. Hawks go on to win. That doesn't happen in drafts. It's all information-based. So, when the trade was made, especially when the number 1 pick is traded, when the trade was made, I think people presumed it was C.J. Stroud. He became an immediate, massive favorite. And then when that information changed, you saw on the odds board right there that it changed. And then as it comes to draft day, you get the information of who the pick actually is. And then you see things like minus 2,000, minus 5,000 jumping up on the board.
I had the under 19.5 minutes until Julian brought up losing a Celtics bet. So I'm cashing it.
I didn't mention my bet.
Cash it, Steve.
I didn't
Let's
mention
go.
my bet. I just mentioned that they lost.
If you pull up the DraftKings Sportsbook right now, though, you can only look at the number 4 draft pick here because they've already taken those first 3.
Which has moved
a lot.
No, so it went to Levis from minus 600 all the way up to minus 1,500. Levis is now minus 300. People are betting on some other players here to go number 4.
So a lot's going on with that movement. Do we think anything crazy could happen with 2 here, guys?
A 2 has been
a
nightmare.
A debacle.
Crazy has already happened with 2.
Right. Like
no matter who the pick
if you want to talk about like a roller coaster, just show who's been the favorite to go number 2 over the past week. We could all go to. I mean, we joked about this yesterday, how Reddit really kind of destroyed this market, but it actually truly did because the first 5 picks came off the board because it really just kind of threw a whole wrench into everything on who the number 2 pick is. And I think we've seen at least 2 or 3 favorites go just today alone for the number 2 pick. So in years past, where it's like I felt like, especially like 2 years ago in 2021, I think it was, we basically knew picks 1 through 3, like rock solid. Like we knew who that was going to be. We can't get past pick 1 this year. And I think that's what a lot of this intrigue comes with this year's draft.
All right, good stuff, guys. We're going to throw it back to our squad out in Vegas. Femi, take it away.
Thank you, guys. And the pick is in.
Thankfully.
Michael Lombardi.
Oh, my God. They took it all the way down.
The suspense is over.
Now we got the next one. I mean, look, we talked about Bryce Young. I think this is really a good pick for Carolina. Mm-hmm. And, again, we said it, back in March?
March 13th. I have the tweet up right now. This is from your Twitter account, March 13th, 11 minutes after noon. I'm not sure why C.J. Stroud is now the betting favorite to go number 1 in the draft. I still think the Panthers draft Bryce Young at the top spot, but no way Carolina made this move without a guy in mind.
No way.
Well done, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well done.
To me, the tape's pretty obvious. The tape on Bryce Young is obvious that he's the best player, and he gives them hope. Now, you're worried about him being 5'10". I grant you that. But he's got that instinct. He has that ability with feel and rhythm into his game, and his arm is really strong. His arm is strong. So you got a powerful arm. You've got somebody that can make all the throws. And what they also got is an alpha male. I mean, they got a leader on this team now. It was something they haven't had since Cam left the building. They have not had a leader at the quarterback position. And so to me, I think that there's brighter days here in Carolina. This is what Tepper wanted all along. He's wanted to get a young quarterback that he could build his team around, and now he's got it.
You know what's interesting to me about this whole Bryce Young to Carolina thing all the way back in March when we talked about it was the assumption that I think a lot of folks made, and I made it early on, like in January, February, is that, hey, if Carolina ever had the chance to go up to number 1, I doubt it would be Bryce Young because in the past, Frank Reich has usually worked with bigger quarterbacks. Andrew Luck, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, Jacoby Brissett, all those guys are like 6'4 plus.
Yeah.
Bryce Young now as a physical outlier, it goes to show, I think, and something that you've talked about a lot on the GM Shuffle podcast, is that this is not just a coach's decision. One person doesn't make a decision. Oftentimes we get the alignment as Bryce Young just got the word that he's going number one.
I love my man Fat Baby right there, too. Nobody looks as good in a suit as my man. That Jimmy Sexton right there, I love him. I love him. I've known him since 1988. It's incredible. So that's awesome. But I think, to me, when you break down Bryce, he has that unique skill and that ability to lead men at the quarterback position, which is really so important. And the players will gravitate to him. And I said this all along. There was no way they were letting Frank Reich make this pick. Now, they were going to take his information. They're going to take his advice. But there was no way that after what Frank Reich did in Indianapolis based on his selections of quarterbacks, whether it's Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, Sam Ehlinger, like there's no way you could let that happen. So I'm happy for Bryce Young. I think this is a great pick for them. I'm happy for the Carolina Panthers. I think they'll do really well with him. I think he's given him a chance. This is a good player. I know he's 5'10", but this guy has great ability. And that arm, now that arm is better than people think it is. It's way better than Tua's arm. This is not a weak-armed quarterback.
And this is something that we talked about, like when the pro day happened down in Tuscaloosa, when teams got to see him throw the football live, because Bryce Young didn't throw at the combine. I think that's where a lot of Richardson and Stroud buzz started.
You saw it in the Georgia games, right? You saw it in those two when he was a junior. And I think, to me, what we didn't really discuss enough about with Bryce Young is this was not a talented Alabama team.
No. It's one of their worst, honestly.
I mean, they didn't have the great receivers, the offensive line. I mean, he won that Alabama. I mean, he won that Texas game by himself.
Yeah, the Texas game he won by himself. I go back to the Iron Bowl 2 years ago down in Auburn.
That long drive he makes all the way through. Yeah, I mean, look, and he has a feel for the pocket. You can see it. Like here, the Texas, you can feel that he has a great sense of it in the pocket. So, I mean, that's something important. Now, this is the next pick as we transition here, Femi. This has been all over the board today, right? The Texans have about 5 minutes to go before they got to turn their pick in. I mean, it's been – I heard Will Levis. I heard a quarterback. I heard Will Anderson. I mean, my sense of it is, based on people that I talked to that are in Kansas City, it was going to be Will Anderson. But I respect the betting market too much to know that wouldn't have moved those numbers there if it wasn't true.
Yeah, the betting market thinks we're going to get a couple of Southern California signal callers going 1-2, both of those guys being from the California area. If we do have Stroud going to the Houston Texans – how do the rest of the quarterbacks shake out? What about my man Anthony Richardson, most athletic quarterback ever at the
Stroud
combine?
just went to Houston.
There it is right there.
Stroud just went to Houston.
You're scooping the broadcast, buddy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, we have our own broadcast.
Yeah, we have our own broadcast.
We have our own broadcast.
So CJ
I think
Stroud
the one
now.
thing that's pretty clear is you can't, the betting market is, for whatever reason, I respect it. And I literally was on the phone driving over here, and I was told by a team, book it. It's going to be Will Anderson. Now, what happens with Arizona? This is the tricky one. Does Arizona move out? Do they take Paris Johnson? This is the greatest news that could happen to the teams pick at 5 or below. Because what's happened now is that two quarterbacks, no defensive players gone yet. And there's a lot of conversation that Anthony Richardson is going to go 4. Does Arizona take an offensive lineman? Does Will Anderson slip to Seattle at 5? See, this is it. And I don't know what happened today, but people that told me Will Anderson was going to be, they weren't lying to me. There's no skin in the game, right? And the one thing I've tried to say all along is nobody knows anything. I mean, nobody knows, right? That betting market was powerful.
Well, right now for the third overall pick, at least at close, Anderson was the favorite -200, and they had Stroud at 3-1, but we know Stroud's going number 2 there. So maybe Cardinals take Anderson, but I think with the quarterbacks going 1-2 is probably a bad sign for Arizona being able to trade out.
Well, unless somebody trades up for Jalen Carter.
Unless that.
Because if you're the Colts, you're sitting there saying that you have a really good opportunity to get somebody. You're going to get you're either getting Levis or Richardson.
It's fascinating stuff.
Would somebody trade up for Levis at 3? I can't imagine that.
It sounds like the Colts had eyes for him, but we're hearing now that maybe Richardson could be the guy for Indianapolis. We're going to learn soon, though. But we do know number 1, Bryce Young, number 2, CJ Stroud. As for now, we're going to hang out here, consume everything, digest what's going on. But let's toss it over to Studio B, Emerson, Charlotte, and the Golics out there in Boston.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. We appreciate it. So Carolina here, Mike, has determined its future at quarterback. CJ Stroud, the same for the Texans here. You wanted them to go C.J. Stroud, the Texans, and they listened to you, Mike. So congratulations.
Yes, the pull that I have.
That's a shocker, though. Not many people.
Well, but this is what we go through before the draft, of lying season, of all the stuff that started out about C.J. Stroud, and maybe they go a defensive lineman and edge rusher. Yeah. You're not winning without a really good to great quarterback, and that's what the projection is for Stroud to be, for Bryce Young to be. So you're looking at two teams, first with Young. You know, their passing game last year was awful in Carolina. They bring in Adam Thielen. They bring in DJ Chalk. They bring in Hayden Hurst. They bring in Miles Sanders. So working on the offense. You look in Houston, I think about 17 people brought in the offseason. 10 or 11 were on the offensive side. So these are the side of the balls that they need to work on. So having CJ Stroud going second, I think, to me, was an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah, it made the most sense. Answer the most important question first. And I think for both of these guys, you look at where they're going. For Bryce Young, all the talk about his size, going to a place in Carolina where, yes, the offense was not a strength, but the offensive line by season's end was. That was a rushing first attack. They bring back all 5 of their starting 5 on the offensive line. A young group to go around there. Ike Ekwonu, their top pick from last year. And then Houston, re-signing Laramie Tunsil, having that blind side protected for C.J. Stroud, who we're hearing is the 2nd overall pick now. And so
Lombardi broke that 6 minutes ago.
Yeah, like I say, early in the market on that.
That was awesome.
New audience every 5 minutes. But, you know, C.J. Stroud, I think this Texans team also young in certain places, right? Damian Pierce in that backfield last year. Derek Stingley Jr. on the defensive side of the ball. There's a lot of good momentum around things with that coach included in all this, and so this keeps it going.
Yeah, and I was going to say 2 new head coaches for these first 2 teams at the top of the board. I mean, Charlotte, how did 2 quarterbacks off the board right away could change what happens next? Cardinals, Colts, Seahawks here to round out the top 5.
I mean, what's going to be really interesting is if the Cardinals trade down, and then we've got 1, 2, 3 quarterbacks, because then it sets you up to have 1, 2, 3, 4 potentially, which has never happened before. And I don't know that I see that happening. I mean, I clearly don't have a crystal ball. But
what Mike wanted when we talked about this last week on the show. Yeah. Brandon was like, I think the Cardinals need to draft a quarterback. And you're like, no, I think they need to trade back and acquire as many picks as possible, because another team kind of shuffling in a bunch of new coaches, new players.
I think they're actually in a pretty good position for this draft. It's all contingent on if you think Kyler is eventually still the guy. Might not even be ready for the start of this season. Bad team. Their odds to win the division plus 2,000 in DraftKings Sportsbook. New coaching staff. No one expects anything from you. So trade back, stockpile picks, try and address your problems with volume, and then focus on building for the long haul, not necessarily the here and now, because you're not ready to win in the here and now.
So the issue with that is, number one, you got to find a dance partner.
Sure.
Right? And then how far are you going to go back? There's something to accumulating picks, but there's also something, if there are really highlighted, high-graded players that you want to get on that defense, like a monster edge rusher, do you take that because he's graded out so high? Because how far back are you going to drop, and then what are you going to get? Yeah, you can get, obviously, quality players, but right at the top, that's when you want those impact guys right away. But overall, I agree, because they have one of the worst rosters, do the Cardinals, in the league. So overall, I agree, trade back, get some more picks. But, again, you need the dance partner, and how far do you drop back where you can still get a monster impact player?
All right, Panthers win the number 1 overall pick. There is no question that they won the largest number of people in that war room. There were 700 people.
Okay,
in that
can we talk about that for a second? It reminded me of the meme where there are a bunch of people in a bar and then someone gets shown on the screen and they all explode. The pick was in and they were all like a bunch of dudes in suits hugging each other and the one woman sitting there, and I'm like, oh my God. But no, I think that I'm just glad that we got that moment.
I mean, and they had to milk the clock for the whole pick.
Yes.
Apparently, Roger Goodell and the NFL are content to keep us all here well into the wee hours of the morning. But Carolina drawing out the drama there, making sure they got their money's worth.
And seriously, if you're one of the people that has to stand up against the wall, you don't even get chairs back there.
Right.
They're standing against the wall. I'm begging out. I'm saying, no one's listening to me.
I feel like they wanted to be there. I feel like if you're lining the room like that,
Let's
you're
see an hour
you're like,
four.
no,
Right.
please let me in.
Or they're like, hey guys, I have an idea. Let's get all of us in this 20-person capacity room.
Yeah.
Let's fit 70 of us in there. It's going to look great on
It's got to
television.
be so hot.
And you know what I didn't see?
Everyone's sweaty.
You know what I didn't see? Catering. So that would be an issue.
There was not a single piece of food
Nothing.
on those
Better
desks.
be in the outer room.
Yeah, well, I would hope.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they're gonna. As we get later into the draft, I hope they don't make them all stay through day 3.
Oh my gosh.
If they all have to be there, we're gonna watch people falling out in real
They
time.
better,
It's gonna be like training camp.
start drinking.
Guys, last April, one quarterback was selected in the first 73 picks in the NFL draft. We have 2 through 2 picks here. Out of the remaining 3 teams in the top 5, Mike Golic Sr., which one has the most pressure on it? Is it the Cardinals? Is it the Colts? Or is it the Seahawks?
Well, the Cardinals are going to kind of set the table now if they do trade back. If they trade back, who's trading up to go to that spot? That's what everybody behind them now is thinking, who are they going to go up and they're going to get? Colts are going to take a quarterback. It's just a matter of who they're going to take. Is it going to be Levis or Richardson? So I think we know that. In Seattle, I still say it's going to be Jalen Carter. I know everybody's wondering about him, and you hear out of, well, Seattle is worried about, the character. I mean, right, okay. Why is that word used? I mean, we know why it's used.
Yeah, I would say it's convenient.
Yeah,
right.
It's convenient.
It's a thing of convenience when you can throw that out there. In actuality, we see this league is about drafting talent, putting in the best possible position to succeed. That's a unique talent. He's really, outside of the quarterbacks, I think Jalen Carter is the most fascinating domino to fall because we've got Tyree Wilson and the other edge prospect, Will Anderson Jr. I'm already forgetting.
But that would be interesting of what Arizona does if they don't take the edge and trade back. Who trades up? What do they take? Colts are going to take a quarterback. Well, maybe there'll be an edge rusher there. Seattle's got to go defense. Their defense was horrific last year.
And if we're looking for the wild card, we're looking for dance partners for the Cardinals. Las Vegas is really interesting to me. If
their roster's also kind of a mess.
Kind of a mess.
Yeah.
And listen, Jimmy Garoppolo in that contract he signed, much like we're talking about with the Seattle Seahawks at 5, they're both teams that could still go after a quarterback. Right. And if they're one of the guys like Levis or, like Will Levis, who you think's going to need a little bit more time, you think you might want to sit for a year, you can line that up and still get some of the advantage of the rookie.
Well, remember, that's the big thing, too, we have to remember. While the 4 are going to go in the first round, Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud are plug and play. Right? I mean, you're giving them the starting jobs because those teams were not good. Anthony Richardson, again, 12, 13 starts. Tough to just say, go do your thing, and I don't think Levis will be that either. I think eventually everybody knows they will, but I think those first 2 picks there, obviously plug and play.
I mean, how tough is it to project those 2 dudes?
Well, Will Levis is interesting because his is a difficult projection because I think we think a lot about him, the lack of weapons from last year. He gets the Josh Allen similarities because both their weapons left for their last year in college, but he ran an NFL offense. So you've got that ease of seeing him play that Shanahan-McVay offense that's become really common around the NFL.
And now we have Adam Schefter reporting that the Cardinals have traded the 3rd overall pick to the Texans.
This is why I love the draft.
Yes,
this is why I love the draft. I'm like, the Texans? I'm like, they're going twice in a row? Oh, my God, give it to me.
It's like the NCAA sheets, the sheets of integrity. When you pick the tournament, you want chaos,
yes,
right?
I want chaos.
Upsets.
My bracket was busted day one, Mike.
By the
love
way,
the chaos.
Speaking of people who got their brackets right here, the last mock draft I saw this morning, Daniel Jeremiah over at the NFL Network had the Texans taking C.J. Stroud at number 2 and trading up to number 3 to take Will Anderson.
Okay, is that who you take?
Not Tyree.
Oh, without a doubt. Now they go on the defensive side. Now for Arizona, though, Arizona is going to lose out on the 2 best edge rushers and the best interior linemen, right? In Tyree Wilson, Will Anderson, and Jalen Carter. They're all going to be gone by 12. So they are doing what you talked about, dropping back, and they're going acquiring picks to acquire talent that way.
I love this move by the Texans, though. I think it's such a power move. I think it's proving to a fan base, like, look, we're here. I'm not messing around. Like, it's a great first thing for D'Amico Ryans to present to the whole NFL, really. Be like, oh, I'm sorry. Did you think we weren't serious? Like, check out what we're doing.
Okay, so here's the return real quick, gang. Cardinals get 12. They get 33. They get a first next year.
Wow.
They get a 3rd next year. Texans get the 3rd overall this year and 105.
Wow.
Reports are Will Anderson, that is the pick.
Here we go.
Shout out to DJ, man.
I love this.
I love how
I love this.
But to your point, I mean, this is a fan base. I called a few of the Texans games the last couple of years, and it's been horrible down there of what's going on. Rightfully so. So this is one of those where the fan base, you have a new coach, you have a new system, the fan base gets re-energized because of these 2 picks. So this is great for Houston. They needed this.
And I love that we didn't overthink Will Anderson Jr., right? We heard all of the smoke around Tyree Wilson and the skills. 6'7", 275-pound, 80-pound pterodactyl man. Will Anderson Jr., much like Michael Mayer, who we'll talk about in this first round as well, had been so good for so long at Alabama. 17 and a half sacks the year ago, over 30 tackles for loss. Ruthlessly efficient is how I describe his game. He plays like a Terminator. There's no wasted motion. He is a force in the run game. He's a complete player right away for you that you can build around. And Dad, you know this, pass rush and pass defense on the back end pair together well. So what helps your young cornerbacks like Derek Stingley Jr. develop even more? Quick pressure up front like a guy like Will Anderson who is ready to plug and play now.
And with Will Anderson, I mean, you just, at the end of the day, you believe the tape of what you see. That's why leading up, talking about the draft for so many years and leading up, it just makes you chuckle all the time of what starts to go on. When you just look at the tape, believe what you see there.
Well, that's what I feel good about this. I'm so excited because I'm like, okay, cool. Like the smoke screens around CJ Stroud and like even the weird test score stuff and just all, you know, it's like the Texans didn't listen to that. Will Anderson, everyone's like, well, maybe Tyree Wilson. And it's like, have you, like, yes, also amazing, but have you watched Will Anderson? Like, are we all seeing the same? It's like you galaxy brain yourself. It's remarkable.
Galaxy brain.
The S2 test is down horrific right now.
Horrific.
What the hell is the S2 test?
Exactly.
I don't know what that is.
Baby.
We didn't come here to play school.
Good for D'Amico Ryans here, guys, because he takes care of the long-term signal caller situation, which was obviously the most important task, and in that dire need in the pass rush, you know, which in the second level of defense too, which you cannot forget that they have the additions already of Sheldon Rankins, Denzel Perryman, Corey Littleton. So he's built a defensive guy.
Littleton, Perryman, you know, just add some more.
Absolutely.
That's why you brought me here, right?
Yes, that's exactly right.
That's why I'm here, right?
We need a big man soon,
But you're right, building his defense. I mean, you knew you had to start with, you have to have a quarterback, but now building your defense, that's where he's going to make his mark.
Think about football. Works from the quarterback back, right? So one of the most important things, guy that can throw the ball, guy that can block for him, guy that can cut his head off.
Yeah.
The Texans got 2 of those 3 in the top 3 picks of the draft.
Yeah, good for them and good for us because we're lucky enough to work with a number of former NFL players here at DraftKings. Mr. Golic, you being one of them, VSiN Sean King, and Mike Pritchard as well. All of you drafted in the NFL draft at one time or another. Right now, you guys are going to take us down a trip down memory lane and bring us inside your draft day experience.
When the draft was going down, my brother Bob, who was already in the NFL, brought a few cases of beer to Notre Dame, where I was.
I was in my apartment in Colorado, just off of campus, in my underwear.
We had a house full of people. We had cousins, aunties, uncles, friends of the family. The house was full. My dad barbecued.
It took me so long to get drafted. I got drunk, I sobered up, and got drunk again.
We had a great time. Outside of the fact that I didn't go as high as I anticipated going.
So I finished my junior year at Notre Dame as an honorable mention All-American, and there was talk of second round, I think was a projection going into my senior year. And I got hurt the first game, hurt my shoulder, and the stock kind of plummeted a bit.
My expectations on my draft day, I didn't have any, to be honest with you. It was a surprise to me. Being drafted 13th overall in the first round was not something that my agent was aware of, or certainly I was aware of. It just happened all at once, to be honest with you.
I was going to the West Coast. Southern boy, St. Petersburg, Florida. I had a great meeting with Bill Walsh and the San Francisco 49ers, and I was convinced I was going to be the next Joe Montana. San Francisco got on the clock. I told my parents, everybody make sure the phone's free, and the announcer said the San Francisco 49ers select Reggie McGrew. Needless to say, the next 20-something picks were a tough time for me.
It was around midnight on the second day. Ended up going in the 10th round, so at that point, I was just happy to receive. It wasn't hear my name on TV. It's a different ballgame. It was have the phone ring and have a GM on the other end saying they just selected you. Now it's a show. It is legitimately an incredible show, where back in my day, as they say, it was a procedure.
It's such an event now, and it's prime time. So it's handling the buzz, handling social media, handling the attention. You're expected to show up at the draft, get the hat, get the bro hug from Goodell.
I think the difference if I was in this draft, man, people would know who the hell Sean King is. In 1999, Tulane wasn't on TV. And listen, I had great cheekbone structure. You know, my hairline was in place at the time. You know, I was articulate. You know, I think I could have made, you know, a couple more dollars off the field. But back then, the brand in itself wasn't what it is today.
The advice I would have for anybody would be to enjoy it, cement it.
Don't let your expectations of where you're going to be drafted impact how you cherish this moment.
Really understand that it's just an opportunity, though.
Just be happy if your name is called. I remember interviewing Aaron Rodgers. Aaron drops obviously into the 20s, and I interview him after that, and he's just ticked off. I went 255. You still went in the 20s, you know? You were still a first-round pick. I get the pride thing, and maybe this is the 10th rounder in me talking. All you want to be in a position for is getting issued a helmet and shoulder pads. Now you have the chance to go on the field and prove to them that you belong to be there.
All right, welcome back, everybody, into the DraftKings Pro Picks Night, presented by H&M Spring and Summer Menswear Collection. Nice and light and loose, which is good because it is hot as hell in the studio.
We're getting all worked up.
The heat of the picks.
It's the heat of the picks.
Excited about Texans football.
And
Anthony
here we go.
Richardson.
Anthony Richardson, 4 overall to the Colts, ahead of Will Levis. How big of a shock is this, Mike?
I'm not shocked. My order was actually Stroud, Young, Anderson, Richard.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Anthony Richardson, and Levis. So I love Richardson.
Yes.
Now again, we're going to have to wait. Remember, they brought in Gardner Minshew. He'll start it off because
Sorry.
I know.
I love him. I love him. I love him. I love him. I just forgot. I just forgot.
Love him.
I just forgot. I love him. I just forgot.
What a great quarterback room, by the way. Florida guys through and through.
Oh, my
He
God.
looks like Jacksonville as someone who's from Jacksonville. He's got the mullet, the mustache,
If
the
he
jorts.
can get Anthony Richardson to wear some jorts, that would be the greatest
Yes,
thing in the world.
and
Listen,
Anthony
Richardson, it's all about experience. It's not. People say, well, he's not ready to play because he can't do the reads and blah blah blah. That has nothing to do with intellect right now. It has to do with lack of experience.
Right.
He needs to see coverages over and over again. That's the one thing. I don't care how great of an athlete you are, and he is. We all knew he was going to be a great athlete at the combine. You have got to recognize defenses a second before the snap, a second after the snap, make lightning quick decisions, and throw through a tiny window. So that's going to take time to get those reps over and over and over again.
It's like his numbers he put up at the combine were historic here, but as your dad has said so many times, you just watch the tape. You watch the tape on this guy, though, and he wasn't necessarily superb at Florida.
No, but he was also better than I think he gets credit for. Okay. He gets the raw label, but what he does on that, think about his situation at Florida. He's there, Dan Mullins gets fired, doesn't really play much that year. Emory Jones splitting time a little bit in some certain packages. Then you get the new staff that comes in here, getting new coaching, new system, and really no weapons to speak of around him in that offense. What you see on tape is guy that moves around in the pocket pretty well and clean, very naturally. When he's under duress, and Dad, you know this, you can drill things all you want. It's about how do you respond when the live bullets actually hit. He responds really well. He has nice touch on his deep balls. Everything Dad said is right. It's all going to come for reps with him. Learning to have a little bit more touch on the intermediate stuff, learning how to make sure he buys time and keeps his eyes downfield. He's got all the tools, and I think he's naturally very good at some of the technical things that he'll get more and more consistent with the more and more reps he gets.
I also think a lot of the tape that people were pointing to, or a lot of his stats that people were pointing to, like his receivers were dropping balls. His receivers were not getting to where they needed to go. So he's bearing the brunt of other people's mistakes when he's got an incredible arm. I mean, the guy could throw it from here to New York.
Yeah.
We're in Boston. And I couldn't be happier with how this draft. It's like very rare that I'm just so psyched for all of the guys so far, and it just feels really good to see the athleticism.
And real quick, the one thing to make sure you don't worry about with a quarterback like this of putting him in too early while he's learning is someone who can take off and run like he can. It's a quarterback that will have, in the beginning, more confidence in his legs than his arm throwing into tight windows. So he'll run sooner than he should. That's why he needs the reps in practice, needs the reps along the way in the film room to kind of learn to have more confidence to stand back there, make the reads, and make the throws.
And I think he should run more right away. Remember, the Colts Weak spot at left tackle last year. That offensive line looked a little more human. Jonathan Taylor in that backfield create opportunities for them to make life really hard on defenders and help them out while they reinforce that offensive line.
Watch a lot of Justin Fields tape and how he ran.
Oh my God. And all of a sudden here, guys, the AFC South has a lot of young quarterbacks here, man. Could be the next great quarterback to division. The division of the working man.
Oh my God, spare me. Spare me.
Let's go.
Emerson's going to come back in a lime green Speedo.
Jesse, Jules, Steve, take it away over there in Studio A.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Emerson. You guys are getting crazy down here. We have a very special guest joining us right now, DraftKings Director of Race and Sportsbook Operations, Johnny Avello, live from the floor in Vegas. Johnny, thank you so much for being here. What is going on? I mean, how's the energy over there? And talk to me about where the biggest money came in during those first couple picks there.
Well, you know, that first pick was actually good for us, and that's unusual because it actually goes south for us. So we're really happy with the first pick. And the reason it was so good for us, Jess, is that you had Stroud money, Richardson money, Anderson money, Levis money. I mean, during the last couple of months. So that worked out well. The number 2 pick, not so well, we did because the money poured in on Stroud today, the last 2 or 3 hours. It was all Stroud money. We closed Stroud 1 to 25, minus 2,500. So second pick, not so good. Third pick, not bad. Anderson Jr. made a little bit of money there. Fourth pick, we thought it would be Levis, and it was Richardson. Levison was a winner for us, and Richardson was a loser. So now we're waiting for Seattle's pick, and you know, are they going to go to a quarterback? Are they going to take Levis, or are they going to take Carter? We'll see, and that's another decision for us. One's the winner, one's the loser.
Johnny, talk to me a little bit about that number 2 pick, because that's as wild of a pick as I can remember. We had Levis at points in time, I believe, a while back, favored to go there. There were points in time Tyree Wilson climbed up to be drafted, to be the first defensive player off the board. He was even favored, which obviously turned out to be Anderson. Then it's Anderson this morning that becomes, I think, minus 360, I think he peaked at DK. So we had at least 4 favorites at this number 2 overall pick. Just your thought process behind how quickly that pick moved and where it ultimately landed.
Yeah, there's certainly volatility, and on the last day, I think, you know, we see the most volatility. But for the second pick to go to minus 2,500, that's just a huge move, and that just tells you what the action was like for the last 2 or 3 hours. You know, we had Stroud in the 2 spot all along, but then, of course, you know, news out, that's not where he was going to go. He dropped down as low as maybe 3, 4, possibly even out of the top 10, you know, on some people's draft. But, you know, today was his day for movement, and, you know, somebody had the news out there, and they pummeled it.
Johnny, I just want to talk about all the unique markets that DraftKings Sportsbook offers too. I think we have the biggest markets that you can really choose from really any book that you can go to at this point. How tough is it to keep up with all those type of different markets, especially with the draft? Because, you know, good example with that number 2 pick, how fast all these things are moving.
Yeah, the team did a great job. I mean, we put up a lot of markets again this year. I know, you know, some places are eliminating the draft, and we just we went after it and made it even bigger. Tried to get better at it, and I think we did, and the team did a tremendous job. You know, the volatility that happens, who knows that? I mean, you know, how that is the most difficult thing to stay on top of, but I think the odds were positioned on all the players correctly, you know, through the months that we've had it up. So hats off to the team here, and hopefully it'll come out to be a positive outcome.
Johnny, thank you so much. We will touch base with you again later on in the show. Fellas, let's talk about what went down since we were last talking about the picks. Obviously, we talked Bryce Young going 1, but then we had C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson Jr. after the trade with Houston and the Cardinals, and then Anthony Richardson. We talked about this before the draft even started, saying like the story could be about some of these QBs who start to drop down the board. So what do you think about Richardson going ahead of Levis and what that means as we move forward?
Well, I think it might be one of the most volatile picks that we have here, because when you think about him and you like the scouting report on him, he is absolutely the most athletic out of all of the quarterbacks, but he was the one that was the most raw, and he was the one that really hadn't seen as much game action, and his game action numbers weren't really all that strong. But I think this is more of a play on his overall athletic ability. Like there's comparisons that he has like a Josh Allen type body, but he also can run like Michael Vick. And when you kind of put all that stuff together, and especially with how the league is going at this point, that obviously can be a huge portion of success for him. So I think they're really banking on the athletic ability, and that's why they took him at 4 over Levis.
So basically, the Redditor was not correct. Julian, we can just go ahead and say that Redditor was full of it.
Yeah, people on Reddit do miss from time to time, believe it or not.
Are you kidding me? Wow.
For me, like, this is where you, like, do you want to go off information and reports or what you think? Like, what I think is that Will Levis is, he could be anything. And Richardson as well, super raw, but like the upside he has with how people are drafting quarterbacks now in the NFL. You got the Josh Allen comparisons, and even better on his legs. So I think Richardson is going to be a better player than Levis, but that's my opinion. In terms of what it meant for the betting market, that is, much different than we anticipated it would be, as the number 5 pick comes in is something much different than we anticipated it was going to be.
Yeah, wow, a shocker. A lot of people saw him going 6 to the Lions, but now we have Devin Witherspoon going 5 to the Seahawks. Shocked by them taking a quarterback here, Steve?
I would say too. I mean, Jalen Carter, not even just about less than an hour ago, was minus 400 at one point. To be going to the Seahawks here. So this is definitely, I think, one of the biggest shocks that we've seen thus far. And then what does this bring now? What's the trickle down effect here? Because like you mentioned too, like he was one of the favorites to go to the Lions, and then the Raiders were also in the cornerback market. Christian Gonzalez was the overall favorite at the time, plus 225 to go to the Raiders. So what kind of effect does this have moving forward now? But I would think, unless you want to say Richardson's probably the biggest shock so far, but back-to-back picks now where, the sportsbook aren't always going to have these right. And obviously, with how volatile it is, that's what we've seen.
So this one, did you mention Carter odds in there?
Yeah, minus 400.
Okay, so this was Carter steamed to go to Seattle for like the last 2 days.
That was probably the most consistent one over the past few days.
So we've been talking about a lot of picks and we just talked to Johnny, like Stroud, 3 hours before the draft, steamed up to minus 2,500. This one, you had to lay juice 2 days ago for Jalen Carter to go to the Seahawks, and he's on the board there, and they wind up going cornerback. So that, again, another one that they kept very tight to the vest, and I think we're seeing no more spoilers here in the NFL draft. Information is a lot different now because this top 5, if you made an exacta of this top 5 odds-wise, you're buying a house.
So at 440 today, Witherspoon to be the 5th pick was 20-1 odds earlier, just a few hours ago.
So what does this mean for some of these guys that are starting to fall now? I mean, what's going to happen with this top 10 grouping here? Do we think the Lions going to take? They were really, Devin Witherspoon everybody was saying Dan Campbell was all about him. So who do we see them taking next?
I feel like Carter has to be the play now for the Lions at this point, right?
He's the most powerful defensive lineman in the draft. I mean.
So, they just used a number 2, right, on D-line.
Yep.
Could they use the help? Sure. If they want to go corner now, because Witherspoon was minus 350 or so to be the guy for Detroit.
Correct.
They could go with Gonzalez, who would now be the top corner on the board.
Now Arizona's moving up to 6.
Oh my God. Okay. So
a lot of moving pieces here.
So Arizona's moving to 6.
Yep.
So the Detroit Lions
Okay, so if I'm guessing, and we're setting ourselves up to miss here because this is on the fly. If I'm guessing, Tyree Wilson would be someone of interest at 6, or Paris Johnson, the O lineman, get their quarterbacks in protection.
Well, that was the thing too with Wilson. If he wasn't taken initially in the top in the second or third, he was one of the candidates to drop after that because there wasn't a need for that with some of those other teams coming up.
Yeah, so there was a time in the betting market where the favorites to go 3 were Tyree Wilson and Paris Johnson. That being because Arizona held the 3rd pick. Arizona then held the whatever it would be, 12th pick, and now turns it into the 6th pick. So those guys that were previously favored to go at 3, which are now both there at 6, would become the favorites. But if we've learned anything, the guys being favored there means nothing because they
Yeah, and what was it? It was 4.5 quarterbacks picked in the first round now, and it's beginning to look pretty chaotic here for QBs. Yeah. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but let's toss it down the hall to Studio B, where Emerson Lotzia is standing by, and there's a Lotzia trades happening.
Jessie.
Wow. Okay, so Cardinals are up back now to 6. What are they doing? What are they going to do here?
Doing some good things is what they're doing
is just
for
like
a
the
team.
movie Draft Day. We're living it, people. Come on.
For a team that has just been awful, now they jump back up. They can get a Tyree Wilson. Jalen Carter's there as well. So edge or inside because they lost one of each in the offseason. Again, it's a team that needs a lot.
This is also interesting because we heard a lot before the draft that Kyler Murray really likes his tackle class, and Paris Johnson in particular out of Ohio State. I think you could have probably waited a little bit longer. The run on tackles was expected between like 9 and 15, but you wonder if they heed any of the word of their quarterback and say, hey, give me some added protection.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Let's quickly go back to Seattle and give them a little love with Witherspoon. That's a top cornerback, shutdown corner, love his physical play. So, that's a lot of people thought Jalen Carter might go there. So do we see the slide? I don't know. He may go right now to Arizona, but I think that was a really, really good pick for Seattle. Again, a defense that was bad.
I just love with all the trades thinking about all the GMs calling each other. It's like in Mean Girls when they're like, hold on 1 second, and like clicking each other in.
Accidentally.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, sorry. I mean, we're not trading with Philly.
Oh, wait, he's got 3 other teams on the line.
I'm not like a regular quarterback. I'm a cool
not gonna lie. I'm
cool
going to say,
GM.
Charlotte, I have covered drafts for a couple of decades now, and that's the first time a Mean Girls comparison has ever been put in there. I'm very impressed.
Thank you.
Again, it's why she's here, because for pop culture expertise right now.
Wow.
You want dynamic? She's a chameleon. I do love the pairing. Tariq Woolen, who you hit on in the draft last year, came on in a big way, got his hands on a bunch of footballs. And now you add this guy, hyper-aggressive defensive back room, a team in Seattle that made massive strides last year based on the Geno Smith resurgence.
Right.
Dad, you pointed out, added a ton on defense this offseason.
I mean, you added a linebacker, D tackle, inside backer, a safety, D lineman, and now, you're drafting a cornerback, and that middle linebacker, you're bringing Bobby Wagner back after he goes away for a year and plays with the Rams. Now he comes back. So I think they're doing what they need to do with what was a bad defense. So, we'll see where it leads.
All right, so Cardinals now on the clock. We're thinking they're going to go defense. Mike, you mentioned when we were off camera, and here comes the Will Levis slide down the board, which was Ross Tucker's bold prediction, bold take earlier this week. He anticipated Will Levis sliding down the board here.
Yeah, and now the question becomes, how far is that going to go?
It is to make it past the Raiders at 7.
That's the one that I've kind of circled there. We heard very loudly from their GM earlier this past week that they're not opposed to a quarterback competition, brought Jimmy Garoppolo in on that 3-year deal, kind of like the Geno Smith deal. Lots of holes on that roster, but quarterback certainly still the biggest among them, even with Jimmy Garoppolo, because you know what he is at this point. He's not your long-term answer.
So if they don't do that, does he drop to Tennessee? What do we think of, a Tannehill, they did Malik Willis? Has he not shown enough to get a shot there? So if they do get past Vegas, does Levis maybe end up in Tennessee?
The pick is in right here for the Arizona Cardinals, and I believe
Paris
they're
Johnson
make me look very smart.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my God!
You've been crushing your mock draft picks. That's what's going on here.
You know what? I just keep my ears to the streets and I listen to mostly what's happening on Twitter because I'm terminally on.
Mike is very smart.
I know
Mike is very, very
What was
smart.
Paris Johnson's S2 test? So that's what we want to know.
Yeah, I can say that's a good question. You know what I know his test on the field is? Really, this guy reminds me a lot of Tyler Smith, who got picked out of Tulsa last year by the Cowboys. A little bit on the raw side, doesn't use all of the length that he's got in his arms. Great motor, great body angles, loves to get after people. And if someone can just coach him up a little bit on using his hands, getting him out and using all that length, he can be a really elite tackle. There's Pro Bowl, all-pro talent in that guy's body.
I mean, he's pretty smart. Is he your top 2 smartest of his 2 sons?
Well, I mean, I have 3 kids and I rank them every day. Mike started the day and last. He might be moving up a little bit right now because that was a pretty good breakdown.
Grinding, baby.
But again,
in the football, first-round pick in life.
Breaking down an old lineman. I mean, though, that's what he played. I mean, come on.
I love it. I do think this is interesting for the Cardinals because if this is what Kyler Murray wanted, this is a real show of confidence in him, and it's sort of like we're sorry for literally everything.
It's quite scary all of a sudden if you're letting Kyler Murray have a little more input.
The statue ceremony back in Oklahoma, so it's all Kumbaya.
All right, good stuff. We're gonna towel off. We're a little moist, but thank God our H&M clothing is nice and light. As for now, let's send it back over to Femi and Michael in the desert. Take it away, gentlemen.
Oh, man, they got the nice and light clothing. We're suited and booted in 80-something degree weather out here in Vegas.
I mean, if Emerson lives through the raindrops. He's got it made out there,
He does.
Nobody's better, and he'll second-guess all these picks. He's watched no tape on anybody.
You're giving it to him now.
Oh, yeah. He'll overreact. That's the best part. I used to do a segment with him all the time. We called it overreaction. He's going to have – wait till the Patriots make their pick. I mean, they'll be overreacting.
Or maybe the Jacksonville Jaguars when they make their pick.
Yeah, maybe.
He's a big Jags fan.
I know.
Duval County, stand up. But how about this draft? We're 6 picks in, Michael. 3 quarterbacks. We've had 2 trades in the first 6 picks. This is what the fireworks that we all expected, and here it is.
I mean, Monty decided to trade back up. We don't know what the details of the trade are, but he wanted to get ahead of the curve to pick the offensive tackle. But I think if you're the Raiders here, you're in really good shape. I mean, you're either going to get Tyree Wilson or Jalen Carter. I mean, this is kind of where you are. Now they're down to almost 4 minutes on the board, but I think, to me, you can't be in a better situation than what they're in because they got 2 defensive players. Whether they go with Carter, feel comfortable about him with his character, they go with Tyree Wilson, feel comfortable about him with his foot. There's 2 things there, but I don't think it'll be Gonzalez. I think it'll be a front 7 player, which they need badly. They need this badly on their team. So this draft has really kind of come off. It couldn't be better for them. Now, where does Will Levis go? That's the next question. Where does he go? Does Tennessee take him down here at 11? Does he slide to Tampa? We kind of thought quarterbacks would slide. I mean, I'm still kind of shocked that Richardson went 4. I really am, because we kept saying all year the guy needs to go back to school. Now he's the 4th pick in the draft.
It's great. I mean, that upside, though, with the talent that he showed off in Indianapolis in the Combine. Ran a fast 40,
I think they
jumped
believe
out the
in
gym.
Shane Steichen. The reason they hired Shane Steichen is to make that transition to the 6-back offense, where they're going to have Jonathan Taylor and they're going to have him as a runner. Now, can it hold up? We're going to find out. That's going to be interesting to see. I do think Houston, what they did was they guaranteed themselves Stroud, and then they came back and got Anderson. They were able to make a trade. They gave up a lot of assets to do it. I think when we look back on that trade, it's going to be interesting. The Raiders are down to 3.5 minutes, so they're taking their time.
I want to ask you about pick
There's
number 5.
the Raiders draft room.
Oh, there it is.
There's no way
here in
my
Vegas.
man was alive. There's no way anybody would be in that room.
I want to ask you about pick 5 with the Seattle Seahawks because at close, Jalen Carter was the favored player to go number 5, minus 400. They ended up going with Devin Witherspoon, who was 13-1 over at DraftKings Sportsbook. And we were both talking about this when the Seahawks were on the clock. I don't think it's corner because traditionally John Schneider and Pete Carroll, they don't take corners high. They kind of develop those guys, take them later. Richard Sherman was a late-round pick as of recent. Tariq Woolen was a late-round pick. How stunned are you? Because I'm stunned that Seattle took a corner this high in the draft.
But I think they're transitioning away from Pete's cover 3 scheme. They played a lot more cover 2 last year. They're trying to play more man. I mean, the cover 3 scheme that Pete ran was a man coverage. Even though it was cover 3, it was a match 3. And I think, to me, Witherspoon was clean. He's really tough. He's got good cover skills. He'll tackle. He's everything you want. There's no miss for him. So I think they feel really good. And the Raiders they turn the card in. They took Tyree Wilson.
Wow. So Tyree Wilson goes 7th overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. He was 6-1 to go number 7 there. And it sounds like the foot is cleared. The medical's all good there.
The medical has been cleared. Everybody feels good about that. And now they got to develop them. I think in this scenario, they probably felt more comfortable with Tyree Wilson. It's going to be interesting now. What's Philly do? Does Philly get into and go after him? Do they trade up to
Howie Roseman got itchy hands sometimes.
I mean, Atlanta's sitting here. You got Jalen Carter on the board. You do not have anybody on your defensive front like Jalen Carter. And if you can't manage a kid from Georgia, I don't know what you can do. So, look, this Tyree Wilson was considered, I think the Texans had him down there too. He's long, he's athletic, he's a prototype defensive rush end. He gives them somebody that can come off and play complementary to Max Crosby, which I think gives them a lot of help. And he's big enough to hold up against the run. The problem is when you take Will Anderson and you play him at right end, he's 240. I mean, they're going to get a lot of runs at him. I mean, Tyree Wilson's 6'6", 270. I mean, he's a big man.
Yeah.
You got a better chance at handling the run there. And that's why I think, but the foot has always been a little bit of concern. I'm told he will be fine for the start of camp.
It's interesting because in that AFC West division, you have high-profile quarterbacks. Of course, the biggest and best quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, in that division, Justin Herbert in that division. This makes a lot of sense. And this is what they tried to do last year when they signed Chandler Jones to kind of have those bookend pass rushers. If you can develop Tyree Wilson, now you can go ahead and – because the only way to beat Mahomes is to get him on the ground.
You got to get him on the ground, and you got to be able to run. And I think, to me, they played it down the middle. They wanted somebody to represent their program who's a great kid. They loved Wilson when he came through. They thought he had a chance to be, really special. He's a man. I mean, he is truly a man. Now, they got to get him healthy and get him on the field, and everybody seems to think he will be. So we'll see how it works out.
I'm really interested to see what happens here at number 8. The Atlanta Falcons, they've been linked to many of players, most notably Bijan Robinson.
They got to take a defensive player. They have too many running backs. I mean, what are you going to put Bijan on the field? Cordell Patterson's a really good player.
Tyler Algier.
Algier's a good player. Huntley's a good – I mean, they were running the ball. That wasn't their weakness. Now, stopping people, they have nobody up front in their front seven that has any power. Grady Jarrett's one of their best. Like, how are they going to do that? Like, there's no chance on that. I think they've got to take that. I think that's pretty clear. I think that the Falcons need a defensive player, and the way this has come down, Chicago's offensive tackle. Chicago wanted to pick Carter the first pick of the draft. They might get their chance now.
Who do you think hears their name called first, Bijan Robinson or Jalen Carter?
I think Carter.
Carter. So you think he'll still go top 10?
Yeah.
He was promised top 10 at least, that we think.
Well, I think Philly will pick him at 10.
Gosh, as a Cowboy fan, I don't like the sound of that.
You're not going to like that.
I don't like that.
Look at this suit here, family. You would look good in that suit.
I love that suit.
Look at that.
I don't know if I could pull off the shirt with the chain, but the suit, I would definitely attempt it.
I'm enjoying that. Yeah. I mean, the color scheme is interesting. We're going to get him in silver and black, though.
We'll see if H&M can hook us up with a suit that looks like that. We can wear it next year for the draft.
I bet Emerson has clothes like that. He just didn't put them on today.
Well, in a roundabout way, we'll get to Emerson, but let's toss it over to Studio A with Jessie, Steve, and Julian out there in Boston.
Back here at DK headquarters on DraftKings Pro Picks Night presented by H&M's Spring/Summer Menswear Collection, which is available in-store and online now at hm.com. So we're breaking down the NFL Draft pick by pick. We have our huge panel of NFL analysts. I am here with Steve and Julian, where we have just been scribbling all over our papers. There's all kinds of notes everywhere. We were talking about how we prepped all day for this, and none of it matters at all anymore because everything is just going crazy. So, Tyree Wilson, how surprised were we to see him go off the board before a lot of these guys?
Not crazy surprised because everything beforehand went so much different than we expected. So, like, Tyree at a point in time was favored to be the first defensive player off the board. He was favored to go number 2 overall. He was connected to Arizona a bunch of times. He could have been 3. Then he could have been 6 when Arizona was at 6. So, like, it doesn't necessarily surprise me. I think that Tyree Wilson had one of the widest ranges because he has some hardware in his foot. He's not cleared by every team medically. So, like, he's somebody that could have gone 2 to 15. He had one of the biggest, widest gaps of any player in this draft. So, of course, the Raiders swoop in, target a high ceiling player. It makes some sense. I just think, I don't know if a lot of people maybe thought that once Will Anderson was the first defensive player taken, that Tyree Wilson would go off the board before Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter was, like we talked about, a massive favorite to go number 5 to the Seahawks. So, not all that surprised by the fit, but just what happened before it to set it up, I guess.
Josh McDaniels, though, kind of taking a swing here. I mean, he kind of needs a sure thing, and this seems like it's not really a sure thing.
I definitely would have liked to have seen them take a cornerback. I think that is one of their most glaring needs.
Well,
but of course, but I think it's fair to say that's also one of their most glaring needs on the team. But, like you mentioned with Wilson, too, I mean, this was somebody who was just so, if you look at any mock drafts, put, 5-6 mock drafts together, Wilson was probably in a different spot every single time. He was the most volatile out of all the players that could go in the top 10.
Yeah, really quick, too, we talked about this. Cardinals playing chess, not checkers. took Paris Johnson at 6, who they would have taken at 3, and then they got a bounty for that trade. So are they just like winning the draft right now?
I mean, they came into this with one of the best draft capitals of the entire draft anyways, along with Houston. They were just in such a great position here, and you're right. Like, they basically got the guy they were going to get anyways, and then they add a first-round pick for next year, too. And that's going to be interesting, too, because, yes, obviously the Houston made, bounds of moves here, but they're playing in a division that could end up being fairly tough overall with the Jacksonville Jaguars and stuff, who I believe are minus 150 to win that division. So that really could end up being a really valuable pick for the Cardinals next year too as well, if the Texans aren't ready to make that next step to be, they're going to be much more competitive than last year. There's no doubt about that. But how that team ends up playing out, that could end up being a really good pick for the Cardinals next year.
We're hearing that it's going to be Bijan Robinson to the Falcons. Is that kind of a wild move? Like, we're hearing that they got nobody up front. They need a defensive player, and they're going to go out and grab a running back. So
not many people, I won't say nobody, not many teams have more needs than the Atlanta Falcons right now. So taking a running back is kind of strange. That said, like we talked about on other draft shows we've done, GMs are saying that this is one of the weakest draft classes they've seen. There's 31 picks in this first round. Some of them have 15 to 18 first-round grades. Bijan Robinson is a really good running back, like potentially generational player. He's one of the most talented football players in this draft. So if the class is weak, that means a running back with generational talent is gonna go up. Now, to go 8 to a team that has a lot of needs, that's a little bit of a weird part, but Bijan Robinson has been linked to this team. They need skilled position players with their hands on the ball. So I think he's going to make this offense, they're going to Desmond Ridder. They could use a guy they can hand the ball to and get them yards, and Bijan Robinson is going to be that dude. So I have nothing bad to say about Bijan Robinson. I think he's a great football player. It's high for a running back. I just think what this draft class calls for is a lot of curveballs, which we're seeing early.
We're seeing the curveballs.
Yeah. Yes, no, truly. Like, I feel like the Falcons need help on both sides of the ball, but running back wasn't that glaring position that they needed to fill. But nonetheless, Robinson was the favorite to go to the Falcons. I think it was plus 175 earlier today.
It was.
I think it ended up closing around minus 110. I think it was what it ended up closing around.
More, 190 at one point, I think.
But they definitely could have used, a defensive end. They could have used some linebackers. I'd love the team get another wide receiver to complement Drake London too, as well. But again, you're talking about. Do you want to fill one of those needs, or do you want to get what could end up being a generational talent, like Julian said, and that's obviously what they went for here.
All right, up next is going to be the Bears. Let's just look ahead to them really quick here. Traded out of the one spot with the Panthers way back, obviously. Do you think they would have traded out of that spot if they had known Bryce Young was going to be a potentially surefire prospect here? Because you think about, how much do they really like Justin Fields?
The 9th pick is going to be really interesting because the Bears they were the worst team. They earned the number 1 overall pick.
What were they, 3-14 on the season?
They earned the number 1 overall pick.
They earned it for sure.
Here they are picking at number 9, and the reason they could make that trade is because they put their faith in Justin Fields, right?
Yeah.
They said, we're going to go with Justin Fields over any quarterback in this class. So it's everything that came with 9 that makes the most sense for the Bears because they have so many needs. It helps fill them. Mm-hmm. But this 9th pick is really important for this franchise. And like the Falcons, they have a lot of positional needs.
And Justin Fields was sacked 55 times in 2022. You might want to protect him, perhaps, we think?
That would obviously be an important piece to take a look at. But, about an hour ago, the odds-on favorite at the time was Paris Johnson, and now it doesn't matter because
the Eagles have traded up to 9.
Well, I told you the Bears need to fill a lot of things, so presumably I know this is a 1-pick move up, but they're going to get something for that and be able to put another player on their team. As these two scribble things down. I quit scribbling things down.
Let me just
is that organized for you over there?
Pick 9 for pick 10, and
you get a fourth. The Bears get a 4th rounder next year out of it. That's a mid-round player.
So who are the Eagles going to take at 9?
Jalen Carter.
Okay.
Yeah.
If there was a live betting market open for number 9, which there's not, it would be Jalen Carter.
Okay.
That's
all we got.
I'll be shocked if this isn't Jalen Carter.
Well, but again, we talked about this earlier, amongst the top 5 picks, Carter had the best odds aside from Bryce Young to go at that spot, and that obviously is not what ended up playing out here. So, I mean, I guess you could say the Eagles are getting some pretty good value here at getting Carter at number 9 now, whereas, this was something that they probably wouldn't even have imagined was even possible at that point before the draft began.
So the Bears, I guess, didn't have interest in Carter is what this tells us. They weren't going to go with Carter. The Eagles will go Carter, and then the Bears presumably will go offensive line at 10. I'll say that I like Darnell Wright to go number 10 to the Bears would be my guy. A guy that played at Tennessee as we get the Bijan official pick. Didn't allow a sack last year. We're talking about how many times Fields has been sacked. Get yourself a guy that doesn't allow sacks. That's what I think the Bears will do at 10. So I think on a night that we have like literally no clarity, the next 2 picks are becoming somewhat clear. Carter and Wright.
So the quarterback total prop is 4.5. So how's that looking right now, fellas?
It is.
It's gonna be right.
It's gonna be. So it doesn't really matter because it's all about whether Hendon Hooker goes.
Yeah.
So 3 of them went in the top 4. 3 of them were supposed to go in the top 4. Now, we thought we'd probably see Will Levis go somewhere up here, and he hasn't. But I don't think Levis is in any jeopardy of sliding out of the first round. So as long as Levis goes somewhere, I'm hearing the Patriots like Levis a little bit. I know all the Mac Jones chatter, but the Patriots are coming up at 14. I know they like Will Levis a little bit. As long as Levis doesn't fall completely out of the round, the prop is going to be where it always was. It's whether Hendon Hooker goes or not.
We're hearing it is going to be Jalen Carter for the Eagles.
And that makes
here.
sense. I mean, that makes sense.
Things are starting to make sense, guys.
It's all making sense.
But looking at that quarterback prop, it's like looking at the teams that still have a first-round pick here, who realistically we think about. Tennessee is obviously one of those teams. I think you could put Tampa in the mix there for a quarterback. Minnesota has been linked to a quarterback too as well. So there definitely is going to be opportunities for teams to grab that up there, but it definitely isn't as clear as it was, maybe about a half hour, 45 minutes ago.
Nothing is clear anymore. I can't even read my piece of paper. I've scribbled all over it. So earlier in the show, guys, Mike Golic Sr., Sean King, Mike Pritchard brought us all back to their draft day, what it felt like to hear their name called, how amazing it was. 2 of our other NFL analysts, Ross Tucker and Mike Golic Jr., they also saw some time in the NFL, but came into the league as undrafted free agents. So let's take a look at how draft day went from their perspective.
Expectations for me on draft weekend were pretty realistic.
I knew I wasn't going to get drafted.
I had been a 1.5-year starter at Notre Dame, so I started my last 17 games there at offensive guard and at center.
This is back when I think the first 3 rounds were on Saturday, and I just sat there all day, both days.
I thought there was maybe an outside chance. My agent at the time was pretty honest and said, you're likely going to be a priority free agent. And my whole goal was, I just need to get somewhere and have an opportunity to try and go make a team.
I was just hoping to get signed. My agent told me before the draft, it was like 50-50.
So I had calls with the Miami Dolphins. I will give them credit, did their due diligence. I got arrested as a college freshman for minor intoxication, and they called to make sure that that was off my record, which it was. They still didn't draft me or sign me after the draft, but it's the thought that counts.
I wait an hour after the draft, and he still hasn't called. An hour. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm not getting signed. No big deal. I just got up at 5 a.m. every day the whole semester, ruined my second semester senior year to not even get a chance to play. No big deal.
Great, it's a grade A mugshot. If you could just Photoshop all of the hair from my mugshot onto my head now, I would be the happiest boy at draft camp.
I grabbed the phone, and it's my agent, and he's like, where were you? And I said, well, I had to eat dinner. I said, you said the longer it took to call me, the worse the sign it was, so I thought I wasn't getting signed. He's like, well, congratulations, you're the newest member of the Washington Redskins.
Teams started calling, and I ended up signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers as an undrafted free agent, and they probably called me in the middle of the 6th round. Said, hey, we got a couple of picks coming up in the 6th and 7th. We might take you with one of these, but if we don't, we'd love to sign you as a free agent.
Are you serious? He said, yeah, I still get chills just thinking about it. I mean, like, totally changed my life.
For me, it really wasn't about anybody else. It was about, all right, what do I have the opportunity to do?
I sprint back where all my buddies are. I go out there and I'm just like, Redskins, like that. And they come over and we all start jumping up and down.
By and large, I look at the process and say that's something that I can sleep pretty soundly at night knowing the way I approach.
That's got to be a top 10 moment in my life to when I ran back out there and told those guys that I got signed. That was awesome.
DraftKings Director of Race and Sportsbook Operations, Johnny Avello, is back with us. Johnny, how's it going? Things descending into chaos for you there?
Yeah, it is chaos, and some crazy things happening, but some crazy things are helping us out, Jess. With these trades, with the Lions trading for the down to 12 and 34, that's helped us. We had a bigger win than we thought we were going to have in that spot. And then we caught a break with the third pick, with the Texans taking the third pick instead of Tennessee, because we thought that would be a loser for us too. So some of these trades are going our way. Hey, very unusual for an NFL draft, but we'll take it. And the Raiders took Tyree Wilson. That was good for us. I personally didn't think the Raiders were going to go that way. I thought maybe they were going to look at Carter or maybe even Levis as a quarterback. So I was kind of surprised on that pick. Falcons took Bijan Robinson. The players, the bettors were on that one. That's one that they focused on early, and so that was a winner for the bettors. And then, another trade. Jalen Carter, to trade. I don't know what's going to happen in the 9th round. I think it was Carter, and then the Eagles are moving down to the 10th spot. I have no idea what they're going to do with that 10th pick. Is it Smith? Is it Najigba? Is it Gonzalez? I really don't know where that one's going.
Going back to number 8, Johnny, that was one that bettors seemed to connect for a while. Atlanta and Philly seem to be the two teams interested in Bijan Robinson. How are the results, if you have them? We're going on the fly here, obviously, in terms of not just the match, like bettors betting on him going to Atlanta, but also the top 10 tickets on Bijan and the over-under on Bijan that came out in the teens but got juiced really low down.
Yeah, they were on that one, Jules. There are some of these that were at an early time. You could see the teams that probably were pointing to running backs, and those were the two you mentioned it, Falcons and Eagles. So Falcons won out on that one. There was some talk of maybe the Falcons trading out of there, trading back a few spots, but I guess they liked their position and ended up getting their running back. I think it's probably a good pick. I think it'll work out well for them.
Johnny, I just want to talk about that Tyree Wilson pick real quick. I know you briefly mentioned that a second ago, but he felt like the most volatile guy in this top 10, depending on where his landing spot was. What was the best case and potential worst case scenario for him to land, just looking at that top 10 pick there?
Well, actually, that one worked out pretty well for us. We had some losers if it didn't go that way. Bijan Robinson, I didn't think he would go to the Raiders. Gonzalez was another one that could have been a loser for us. So that one actually turned out well for us.
One more for you, Johnny, if you got it. The rest of the way out, obviously, there's been so many curveballs so far. What are some of the biggest? What are bettors betting the rest of the way out? I guess whether it's previous exposure or through the live market.
Jules, I went down and I looked at the next 10 picks or 15 picks or so, and it looks like we're in pretty good shape. Don't see any real hazards there. One thing of note here is Tennessee with the 11th pick. I mean, there's Levis sitting for them in their back pocket. So I don't think they thought he'd be around at this time, but that looks like where they have to go.
Johnny Avello, thank you so much for holding down the fort for us and giving us all your amazing insight. Let's hear from the Golics and Charlotte down the hall with Emerson.
So up to this point, we've had 3 trades. We've had 3 quarterbacks go in the top 4. We've had arguably the top prospect in this draft. Carter slipped all the way to number 9, going to the Eagles here. Real quick, because you saw Bijan go to Atlanta at 8. We all agree. Incredible prospect, incredible talent. Supposed to be the best since really Saquon Barkley at the running back position. But you said you didn't like that.
No, I didn't. I love the player.
Yes.
But this is a team, losing record last year. a team that has some holes to fill, especially on defense. Offensively, they were third in the league in rushing with 160 yards a game. Now, take out Marcus Mariota's yards because he left. They were still top 10, even if you take his out. So that was not the way to go for me, though I love him. Algier had over 1,000 yards. Cordell Patterson, you love the way he runs the ball, too, when he's involved in it. So I think there was guys on defense they could have gone to help that side of the ball.
Yeah, that was perplexing. I don't think, and this is part of the draft, is you've got to do enough self-scouting. You've got to be self-aware enough to know your position in all of this. At the same time, you look at Arthur Smith's background, who's at the helm of all this. He is used to operating an offense with a quarterback that's not maybe one of the league's elite, and they're going to try and find out what they think they have in Desmond Ridder. But to stack this now with Kyle Pitts, Drake London at wide receiver, and Bijan Robinson filling that Derrick Henry role in the backfield of this offense. Maybe Arthur Smith saying, hey, I'm going to win this the same way on offense I did. The only problem is Tennessee, they had some dudes to get after the passer on the other side that Atlanta grossly lacks right now.
And he's the first Longhorns offensive player taken in the first round of the draft since Vince Young in 2006.
Well, so let me ask you.
You're a big Bijan fan, right?
Let me ask you a question. Is Texas back?
No, don't do that.
Just
like
Texas. Is Texas. No, I think as someone who doesn't care for or have any rooting stake in the Falcons, I love this because I don't really care what they need. I love that a running back. Sorry, Falcons fans, but I'm a Patriots fan, so we already hurt you. But first of all, I think they're still hurt from that because Arthur Blank can't run the damn ball out of his head. So they're like, we're going to take care of that. But I also do think that everyone says don't draft a running back because the economics of it. But I think that that's where the humanity and then the economics of the sport are just pretty cruel. So I just love seeing a guy who's that good, who really takes a toll on his body, get paid. I just think it's...
And to your point, and it's a good one, is let's not forget the type of player he is. Even though we don't really agree with the pick, he's going to help that team.
Right.
I mean, running the ball and catching it out of the backfield. He's going to be an asset to that team. I think they should have gone a different place, but I love the fact he went in the top 10. I love the fact that we're not this running back shouldn't go in the first round garbage. If he's good enough, draft him because he's going to help you.
He is, yeah.
Jalen Carter now reuniting as well with Jordan Davis.
And Nakobe Dean is linebacker.
Mike, your former team, the rich are getting richer here.
I mean, this was one, we did our own mock draft, and I had Jalen Carter number one that I would take if he fell, but in our mock draft, he went to Seattle, I think, at 5, so I couldn't get him. But this was the quickest pick that was in, right?
Yep.
I mean, of all the teams on the clock, they were the quickest in. It was like, my God. Put his name on the card and get it in. Let's go. You lose Hargrave, who had a monster year. That 70 sacks his defense had, but you lose him. You lose an edge. You're getting a little long in the tooth as well, especially with a Fletcher Cox in the middle. This guy just absolutely destroys offensive line. So I really look forward to watching him play in that line.
Draft Georgia players.
Yeah.
If you want a coherent draft strategy that's pretty ready-made, draft Georgia players and prosper. They have realized that, and they understand the value of interior pass rush. That's an Eagles defense. 70 sacks last year. They like to go 5 up, get bodies at the line of scrimmage, and those edge rushers, getting those guys turned loose, really has a lot to do with making sure you've got guys that can occupy on the inside. Jalen Carter, one thing you saw on his tape time and time again, if you try and block him one-on-one, he's going to make life a living hell for you.
And just think, Jordan Davis he got nicked last year and really didn't get involved in the nickel part of it, the passing. That was still a Fletcher Cox in there. But if he could start improving his pass rush, and you have Fletcher Cox, and you have Jalen Carter, and you have Jordan Davis, I mean, the things you could do. Because that's the one thing I know when I was on that line, that great line of a Clyde Simmons, a Mike Pitts, Jerome Brown, Reggie White, the big thing was depth. To be able to rotate.
Right.
Yep.
And they lost one, but you start to get some of those players where you can rotate them around knowing you're not going to have to play 70, 75 plays a game. You can come in with fresh legs on all you old linemen who are playing every single play and beat up on you.
I know. You cheaters have to do that amongst yourself. The other thing I'd say about that room, though, and you mentioned depth, Fletcher Cox, the leadership of that room.
Yeah.
If you have concerns about Jalen Carter and certain parts of his attributes, some of the questions about him off the field, the study, anything like that, you're putting him in a really positive locker room environment, a great culture in that defensive line room, and a great place to foster this unique talent.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, that's such a good point, Mike. And I'll never forget, I was in Michigan this past season, and I was interviewing Aiden Hutchinson, who'd come back for the Michigan. I'm blanking on what game it was, but it was a big one. And he was
most of the time they are.
Yeah, right. And he was like, yeah, it's been. I asked him how it was different being in the NFL from college football, and he was like, well, you got a lot of older guys, so it's sort of different. Like, there's one guy, and I forget who he said, but he was like, he's 31 and he has kids, and I was like, I don't think this young man knows how old I am but so I do think that for them, they realize it in the moment too, and it makes a big difference.
It is, but to your point, it is wild because when I got in the league, it was so weird how in college you practice, you hang out with your teammates and your schoolmates there. Everybody goes home. So I went in there, and there were guys married, and by the end of it, I was married, and we had
and
Mike, and we had
there.
Jake. They were a couple of years old, so yeah, it's definitely a difference, yeah.
So we've talked enough about the defensive linemen now.
Yeah.
Let's get to
I was just going to say,
one of my
dude,
favorite picks.
We knew that the Bears had that massive haul from moving down from number 1. Then they make the small little trade there, move back another one with the Eagles, and they end up taking Darnell Wright, and that's a perfect spot to fill the biggest need along their offensive line. And then now another offensive lineman off the board. We thought possibly Will Levis to the Titans, right?
Yep.
No.
He's the dropper.
Peter Skoronski, baby.
Yeah.
What?
So back-to-back beef here. Darnell Wright was
your jam.
Yep.
Darnell Wright was my favorite offensive line tape from this draft. He is such a smart football player. Everyone thinks in that Tennessee offense, warp speed. You're trying to minimize the effect of your offensive line one way or another. This guy is smart. He is one of the savviest pass protectors, great hands. And I think now in an offense that's going to slow down the pace a little bit and be ground-based, not having to worry about 90 plays a game, you're going to see him with an even better base. He moves people out of there. Incredibly physical tone setter up front for a Chicago offense that we know is run first, but wants to give Justin Fields time to continue to develop that passing game.
And like all linemen, they hold really well because they have to, because they're the worst athletes on the field, right?
Not this guy.
No, I know.
He's actually great. That was my bag. I had to do that
defensive lineman over
One
there.
thing I'll say, Darnell Wright and Skoronski, both guys that are versatile, right? That could go inside if need be, correct?
I think Skoronski is the best candidate for that in this draft class. I think Darnell Wright could and should be starting on the outside.
But he could, if you want to go for your best 5 and it happens to knock him in, it would be okay, right?
You could. The interesting thing is going to be how they go with him and Tevin Jenkins, who's been injured off over there. Because Darnell Wright really clicked when he went over to the right side. He had played left tackle for Tennessee before. The right side is where it clicked. And that's a hard move to make, mirroring back and forth. It's a lot harder than people give it credit for. Skoronski's guy, I think with his build, his technique in the short area, he can go inside. And Tennessee, listen, that's a perfect Vrabel guy to go in there and be a brawler.
Charlotte, Lions, Jets, Patriots, Packers will round out the top 15 here. Give me a bold prediction. What's going to happen here?
The Patriots are going to trade down.
Oh, my God.
I, for one, am shocked.
No, you don't say. No, I don't. I'm bad at these bold predictions.
That's okay.
Because I feel like everything gets all shaken up. But you guys go.
Well,
what about like a Will Levis?
I was just going to say, how about a Will Levis? We just heard Mac Jones was getting shopped in the offseason.
Okay.
Is there any way?
Oh my God.
Is there any way Bill takes Will?
Oh my God.
Listen, I'm just throwing it out there.
This is too much
this is
for
what
my
we
little
do.
brain to handle.
But this is the thing now, the story. Will Levis.
Yep.
Will Levis is making that fall. Who's going to grab him?
Yep, we're already seeing shots of him on the draft broadcast, awkwardly sitting in the green room.
Reminds me of our buddy Brady Quinn.
I know.
Way back when.
Another very jacked, handsome quarterback falling in the draft. So a bias against muscle-bound quarterbacks that we cannot allow to continue. I hope Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions draft the Emerson Lotzia of quarterbacks in the draft class.
Very much. We love snacking on kneecaps, that's for sure. All right, we got to go back out to the dudes in the desert. Femi, Michael, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you guys. I mean, they're talking about Levis and how jacked up he is. I don't know about Levis, the quarterback, but the workout plan, I do want to subscribe to that one. Where's he going to go? He's now outside
that's a great
the top
question.
10.
He's not going to go to New England. Everybody thinks he's going to go to New England at 14. I don't think that's happening. So I think to me, could he go to Tampa at 19? I mean, that could be a consideration. I mean, look, we talked about the quarterbacks. I mean, Richardson's uniqueness in terms of his athletic skills, I still think at 4 it's a huge risk, to take him, but they did. And Stroud and Anderson, they get that based on giving up a lot of draft picks to do it. So we'll see how this all plays out. But, I mean, where does Levis go at this point? One thing about quarterbacks, like musical, once a seat's taken, do you take one? Does Tampa take him? Who else? Minnesota?
Seattle's at 20.
Minnesota was enamored with Richardson. And I think if he slipped, they would have traded up to get him. So, we just got our second running back to go.
Whoa.
Detroit took Gibbs.
Wow. Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama.
How about that?
Hell of a player, and I'm not wowing because of the talent. I'm wowing that we got a running back, 2 of them in the top 15.
But Gibbs and Robinson are weapons. I keep saying this. It's, there's a notion out there that, it's okay to pay Keenan Allen, it's okay to pay Allen Lazard, but you can't pay a running back. To me, that's it. New England's now, Green Bay is on the clock. Big Daddy is nervous as hell right now. I've been texting him. It's going to, could we get our first receiver here?
That may be. Jackson Smith-Njigba has been bandied about in the top 15, the Ohio State wide receiver. But he's not a traditional X, though, and that's, I think, something that
he's going to play in the
with.
slot. He's going to play a slot receiver. I mean, it's a lot of to draft a slot receiver at 13 is a little prohibitive.
It's high.
I think so. But, let's go back. Gibbs gives Detroit. How does this make sense for Detroit? You pass Bijan at 6 to take Gibbs. Obviously, they like these 2 players the same, right? They felt like they could go down and get them. And, DeAndre
they signed
Swift.
David Montgomery, I believe, didn't they?
They did sign, but they have Swift, who I think is one of their best players. Yeah. I think he's one of their best players. It's an interesting move for them, adding more weapons to their arsenal and offensively. But they got a bunch of draft picks for it, too, right? Where they traded down, right? So Detroit traded with
Arizona because Arizona moved back up
so
to
Detroit's
6 to get Johnson.
Detroit, the Arizona traded their first, their second, and their 5th, and they flopped in the 3rd. So, for Detroit, you basically in a second-round draft, which is kind of where we are, this is kind of a way to where you can start getting more players. But, Green Bay's on the clock now. We got our second running back, which is a lot earlier than I thought it was going to go.
We haven't seen a wide receiver hear their name called. We haven't seen a tight end hear their name called. I know tight end has been a position that has been talked about with the Green Bay Packers, helping Jordan Love, getting as many talented skill position guys to have him succeed. Because let's be frank, Brian Gutekunst, his job is tied to Jordan Love's success. Right. Do they maybe target Michael Mayer or Dalton Kincaid, one of those big tight ends?
There's been talk about them taking an offensive line, taking a tight end. There's been talk about them taking a receiver. In Jigba, that's been what we've heard. It would be really interesting if they took a receiver. After Aaron Rodgers is gone, could they take Mayer? Could they take Michael Mayer? Look, like I said earlier, this draft is so weird that you can't really fault them. They could go in a lot of different directions. They're kind of get the same type of player here.
How about Jalen Carter as we kind of dance back to what was going on inside the top 10?
Your worst nightmare, huh?
Jalen Carter up to number 9. As a Dallas Cowboy fan, it was a pen toss pick for me. I did not want to see that happen. But we talked about how the Eagles, Howie Roseman, he loves to build in the trenches. They drafted Jordan Davis in the first round last year, his Georgia teammate. Now they followed up with Carter. With those Georgia guys, maybe they can kind of help him stay along the right path out there in Philly.
Yeah, no, they've got a lot of support, right? So they got Dean, they got Jordan Davis. Now they got 2 young, big defensive tackles from Georgia's program. And let me say this to you. They'll get a year. Fletcher Cox will mentor him for a year, Brendan Graham, but this guy will take over. This is a huge pick for Philly. They traded a 4th-round pick to move up a little bit, and they've got themselves one hell of a player.
I almost liken it to the Arizona Cardinals when they drafted Tyrann Mathieu, and Patrick Peterson was already there. And then Tyrann Mathieu, back in his draft process, everybody talked about how he was suspended that final year at LSU due to the marijuana and all that stuff. And Patrick Peterson pounded the table. He went to bat for him, and Tyrann Mathieu is now one of the best leaders in all of football.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how that happens, right? You never would have thought that, especially for a kid that had a hard time. I spent a lot of time with Mathieu, coming out, Tyrann Mathieu. And it was, you were concerned about is could he not test positive for marijuana?
Mm-hmm. A prediction on Will Levis. Where do you think he goes?
Okay, so let's just put Minnesota's got to be an option, right? They got to do something with Kirk Cousins' contract. So Minnesota's an option. Tampa's an option. I think that's really, where else is there? What other options are there when you go through the board? Well, who else needs a quarterback, right? Tampa, Minnesota.
I still say
Seattle,
I say
but
Seattle.
do you want to give up that pick for Will Levis? Are you sure about that? I think I think what Seattle did was traded down. I mean, Seattle picked their good player. I think if Richardson would have been there, maybe they would have taken him as a chance. But, I mean, look, when you throw for 100 yards against Vanderbilt, I mean, the tape wasn't great.
I know you've talked about the poise not really being there with Levis. Is that kind of what's caused this drop for him? And who knows if it's a drop
I still
or
go
not.
back to this conversation. You know, he couldn't beat Sean Clifford out. Like, I want to be able to see how that works.
No, that's a fair question to ask there for Will Levis. And I think that's going to be the story of the draft. Unfortunately, I know the broadcast are probably going to start showing pictures of Will Levis in the green room waiting.
They already have.
And that's a bummer, honestly, because it's like you hate on what is going to be arguably the best day of his life. You don't want this to become a thing.
But at some point, I mean,
thing,
I mean, look, you got Tampa, you got Minnesota, maybe Seattle. You know, I think to me, there's some possibilities. Is there somebody from the bottom of the top of the second that could come up into the first? This isn't good for Hooker now either.
No, it's not good for Hooker to have Will Levis dropping his here. Does Emerson's Jaguars, do they get a good player in this
Green
draft?
Bay just took Luke Van Ness, the defensive lineman.
Wow. So Luke Van Ness, they continue to add to that defense after adding a couple of Georgia guys
I
last
tell
year.
Big Daddy that one.
He thought it was going to be a safety or a tight end. He gets Luke Van Ness there, the pass rusher, going to the Green Bay Packers. We're going to continue to hang out here all weekend long out in Las Vegas, following the draft all across VSiN. Make sure to check us out. Also, check out the GM Shuffle podcast. That will be tomorrow morning, a new episode as we react to everything, all 31 picks here in the first round. But for now, let's go back to Studio B, Emerson, Charlotte, and the Golics out there in Boston.
Awesome. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Jahmyr Gibbs. Okay, so that's two quarterbacks or two running backs. So 1.5 running backs was the total taken in the first round on the DraftKings Sportsbook. The over hitting this early. Who the hell saw this coming? Nobody.
I don't think he did. I mean,
No.
he's at home. And I know sometimes
He's
they
like,
say
damn,
home,
we
but
should have gone.
yeah, you see him putting the hat on, being
Somebody
like,
go
"What?
get me a Detroit hat.
How do you get it so bad?"
I'm not going to lie. Two running backs have gone. I love them both, but it's a head scratcher to me. Again, this was right in the area of a top 10 running team, right around 130 yards a game. Swift, who I maybe they're not ecstatic with, but he caught 40-some balls out of the backfield. They bring in David Montgomery, got another 30 or 40 receptions out of the backfield and runs the ball well. So I thought they'd have gone defense. They only had 12 interceptions on the year. I thought it might have been a cornerback possibly here, though they picked some up in the offseason. But I thought they'd go on the defensive side of the ball. Or a Michael Mayer at tight end. I was a little surprised.
Yeah, this one, both Atlanta and the Lions channeling their inner Michael Jordan and saying F them defenses, apparently. Just going to win. And listen, this is a team offensively, if you are Detroit, if we were going to do that in a vacuum, absolutely in the right place to absorb this. We talk about Atlanta being in a bit of a different spot. The Lions, that offensive line, all the weapons they've got there, and that Ben Johnson coordinated offense are great, but you do need so much help. Christian Gonzalez has been sliding, the cornerback out of Oregon, who was seen as that guy 1 and 2 with Devin Witherspoon in this draft. So I'm a little bit stunned. I know we've got Lucas Van Ness that we think is coming off the board next to Green Bay. I heard the guys in Vegas talking about. And so
also,
I'm just not sure, man. I love both backs. Jahmyr Gibbs is he's the most versatile weapon. He's the best pass catcher in this draft class. He has so many great things, and I am glad to see these running backs getting their respects. I just know, based on what we saw last year for Detroit, that defense is the reason that they fell short of their hopes in making the playoffs.
Nothing against the players, more about the fit.
Yeah, totally.
All right, cool. So right now we have our third installment of NFL Draft Memories.
Oh, boy.
One is an extremely epic story told
Legendary,
by...
you might say.
Yes, exactly. Told by you, young lady.
Not to put words in your mouth, but...
Thank you for doing that. I need that help sometimes.
Coming into 99, I thought I was going to be a first-round draft pick. That's what I had heard.
The expectations on my draft day were, at the point where I was to hopefully just get picked.
I was being compared to the Rocket Ismail from Notre Dame and the stats, and certainly I opened eyes at the combine.
Oh, my draft day story. I mean, it's pretty legendary by now. I thought I was going to get drafted out of college. I wasn't totally sure. I was sort of a dark horse. So I'm sitting at my parents' house in San Mateo, California.
It took a while. I was picked number 255 of the draft, so it definitely took a while, but kind of a quick call at midnight. I was tired. I wanted to go to bed, so basically it was like Thank you for the opportunity, and I'll see you soon. I'm going to bed.
My phone started ringing at pick 10, and it was the Dallas Cowboys. Then it was the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then you can throw in some other teams that might have had some interest in wondering if I was going to last that long.
Pick 40 goes, and then pick 44 goes, and pick 47 goes, and I basically have checked out. I'm emotionally logged out of the NFL draft. I didn't care if the NFL folded.
We're at like the 4th round, and the phone is just not ringing. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my God, it's not gonna happen. We get to the 5th round, nothing. 6th round, pick 199, the phone rings. And my parents were looking at each other, we're like, oh my God, could this be it?
Ultimately, I ended up in a great spot in Tampa, but I thought I was going to be a first-round selection.
I was one of the lucky ones to get chosen in that first round.
Just happy to have the phone ring and have a GM on the other line that says, hey, welcome, you're a Houston Oiler.
Answer the phone. And now look, it's not going to be Belichick calling you if it's a 6th round. It was an assistant or something, but I'm just looking around being like, oh my God, it's happening. Like, I'm going to the NFL. You're not Oh. Sorry, yeah, that was Tom Brady. That wasn't me. I'm just trying to fit in. Anyway, my best friend's Ben Affleck.
Hey, incredible draft memories there by you.
Yeah, wow. Thank you.
Like, epic.
The chip on your shoulder, I can see it from here.
Listen, when you've got 7 rings.
You sold it so well. I'm sorry, but I just feel I had to step in there and bring you back to reality.
Grifters need to be taken down, so I forgive you.
Sorry.
No, you're kidding me, Tom.
Wait, no, what?
You're
Wait,
kidding
what happened?
me.
What happened?
Right now, I believe they have traded back. They have traded with the Steelers. They have traded to the Steelers.
Bills. Oh, we could
I'm
have
listening,
taken
Tom.
Jackson Smith and the Jigba. We could have stuck it to the Jets because now they're going to take him for Aaron Rodgers.
Okay, 14 for 17 and 120.
You called it.
This is unbelievable. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It wasn't a bold thing because they always do it, but you were right.
But I was right. Which seldom happens to me. So,
Well,
I'm going to take it. But, oh my God.
Maybe they're probably thinking Levis is available there at 17.
No, I
wonder now for Pittsburgh, Anton Harrison. We're talking about offensive tackles, which is definitely a need for that team.
Yes, it is.
We've seen that run-on guys come already. He was a guy out of Oklahoma, really came on in the back half of this last year.
Off before Jones, Broderick Jones.
Because
those are the two left, right?
You could certainly talk me into it, man. Anton Harrison, once you got to the back half of that season, he's as good. So mirror dodge is one of the most fundamental offensive line drills. It's like basketball. Think a great defender in basketball, just trying to work to keep your hips in front of guys. Anton does that as well as any player in this draft. So it's about what flavor of ice cream you want with these two. Both really good athletes. But Broderick Jones, you mentioned, coming out of Georgia, we see him. He is the best in space in this class. All that pin and pull stuff they did, getting him on the perimeter, him running over poor hapless defensive backs at Georgia. So it's what flavor of ice cream you want. I'd be curious with the Pittsburgh and how much gap stuff they run on that team. That's exactly what you get a lot out of that Oklahoma offensive line.
Mint chocolate chip.
It's a great. Thank you.
I love it.
It's a great flavor.
People on that flavor. It tastes like toothpaste. I'm like, dude, you're eating the wrong chocolate chip.
Well, I was just saying, you're eating the wrong toothpaste.
I ate toothpaste as a kid, so that's why I love it.
Wait,
as
really?
a kid?
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, no, because as a kid, I will back you up a little bit as someone who has, probably consumed too much toothpaste. And bubblegum toothpaste does taste like candy.
No, it's the Toms of Maine stuff. I'm from New England, it's hard to, anyway.
Okay, so I would, Mr. Golic, would love to get your reaction to who the Packers took, because it was Lucas Van Ness. Yeah. And he wasn't even starter for the Hawkeyes.
Well, they're the place that likes to start the older players, and, he's the younger guy. Yeah. Got him. Well, but what he can do is he can be that end, and in nickel he can slide down. So he can be that versatile guy that can move around. You think back to the Giants and the NASCAR package. When they got to the nickel package, it would be a lot of times 4 defensive ends. That 2 would slide down inside. Well, Van Ness can do that as well in the passing game if you want him to. So he's kind of a versatile player to be able to do that. But you're right. I mean, it was weird from the playing time situation in Iowa. Everybody loved him at the combine, which again nerves me a little bit. Again, Short said the only thing you should love about the combine is it should make you go back and look at tape again on somebody, not go off the, oh my God, look what he did in shorts and a T-shirt. I just elevated him because of that. If it goes back and makes you watch more tape, I'm cool with that.
Looks like Drago and very moldable would probably be the sell, right?
Oh.
Big body type that you can go. He's
Enough
pretty much
said
been a
with
bull
the
rush
Drago
specialist, so you're going to have to do a lot of things to develop him. But he's a big old hoss,
He's
and this
beefy.
is a league that loves big old beefy hosses.
All right, so which team coming up here needs to absolutely ace its pick?
I think the Jets are going to go wide receiver.
Yeah.
Right, and keep giving more help for Aaron Rodgers.
So that's another team that could do tackle,
I'm
offensive
sorry,
line
they
also.
could do O-line. There's a couple. You're right. I think they may go O-line. Washington,
I think quarterback.
I think Washington has to go either O-line if anybody's left, or go cornerback.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the two positions to hit on there.
Yeah, I would say either of those two. The one that becomes really interesting to me is what's going to happen with Tampa. That's another team that could have used offensive line help. You're in a different era
They
now.
have Baker, too, so they're good at quarterback.
They're going to
totes
take
my
Will
goats.
Levis. They're going to wait for Will Levis to
Oh.
fall, and they're going to take him.
You couldn't even keep a straight face, Aaron. You said that.
Broderick Jones
Tampa's
to the
going to
Steelers.
take
Will
Will
Levis.
Levis.
That's an
He's
interesting
still
thought,
there.
Tampa.
Broderick
I
Jones
mean, do
to
you
Pitt?
think they trust Baker?
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Absolutely.
Broderick Jones. Yeah.
Okay.
Man, look at this.
Yep.
So there's online.
Another kid out of Georgia. You're right, Mike. Just draft Georgia guys.
Draft Georgia players.
Safe. Talk about
Yep.
safe
The
bets.
NFL is going to be all Georgia players here within the next 4 years if they continue churning out talent like this.
Listen, I mean, it's fun to watch.
Yeah.
It's not fun if you're not a Georgia fan, but
I'll make my last pick here as we're going down the next few. Detroit Lions, Michael Mayer.
Oh, yeah. That's a
Love
match
that.
made, a
Love
match made in heaven. If he
that.
doesn't
I
go
love
there,
that.
Yeah.
watch the Dallas Cowboys. And Charlotte mentioned Will Levis,
Yeah.
the teams to watch. Tampa, and then sneaky maybe the Minnesota Vikings at 24.
That's right,
right,
'cause, that's right. Michael Lombardi was just saying earlier, too, out at Wiesn in the desert, that they need to figure out something with that contract with Kirk Cousins right now.
Kirk Cousins, the greatest business quarterback of all time.
Oh, yeah, you're damn
Wait,
What?
there's a snake on Broderick Jones's bed? What, he's a pet snake?
Wait,
Sorry,
is
he's
he-
not- he's a snake guy.
Okay.
No.
What does that tell?
Oh,
All right, when
okay.
you're a snake guy, what does that tell you about an individual?
I would
I'm not
draft him. No, it tells me that if this is a man who has a snake wrapped around his arm, he's not afraid of anything, and you take him.
True.
All right.
You know what I'm
Fearless.
never
You draft
doing?
that
I'm
man.
never going over to his house for a party.
Oh,
Ever.
My guy
How
is.
do you know he's got snakes there?
He just told me he was going to invite you, so
I
that's
don't like.
too
I'm
bad.
going to stay outside.
he just slapped her.
My guy knows his way around a hot topic. That's what I know.
Holy
Oh, hot topic.
If you
I was thinking
100%.
hot pocket. I'm
The
like,
Venn,
No,
the
no.
Venn diagram of snake owners and hot topic customers is a perfect circle, my friend.
Wow.
Oh man, that was fun. Our job here in this studio is done for now. So well
but it was so
done
fun.
to all three of you. Yes, it was excellent.
I'm going to go meet a couple of people, Barley and Hop. So.
Pops. Stop it. All right, Jessie, Coffield, Jules, Steve Buchanan, bring us home here. We got the dad jokes galore.
Boom.
Man, we just could have heard you guys. We could have listened to you talk about Hot Topic and snakes all night. Right? I mean,
what way to wrap up the show.
Yeah, big snake guy, apparently, which is absolutely terrifying. Broderick Jones, excited for him and all of his Steelers teammates to, deal with that in the future. Steve, wild that a wide receiver has not come off the board yet.
Yeah, a little bit. Obviously with the amount of trades that have happened, we've had teams move up that's not their first need. Speaking about things that aren't first need, running back for the Lions definitely probably wasn't their first need. But you know what? The Lions are still in this. They have a couple more high draft picks that they're going to be going, so they obviously feel like they can address some of their other needs other than that. But yeah, a little bit surprising here because now it's really like, the Patriots could end up being that first team to take a wide receiver at 17 now because, even though I heard them in the other room say that, the Jets could be that, I feel like the Jets are pretty well set at wide receiver with what they have already on the board. Like
They were like minus 200 to 300 range to go offensive line, which I
Yeah.
think is why the Steelers jumped the
That's what
Jets
it sounds
to go
like,
with
yeah.
Broderick Jones there. Probably would have gone 15.
Yeah, because it looks like that's who the Jets wanted to take, and that's why the Steelers jumped up. Because really, it wasn't that much of a difference from 14 to 17, but
Right.
obviously they wanted Jones enough, and they felt like he'd be gone after that because I don't see Washington taking Jones there. So that was the move there. But going back to the Jets depth chart at wide receiver, you're talking about Garrett Wilson, who should have a huge year now with Aaron Rodgers, Corey Davis, Allen Lazard, and you even got Denzel Mims and Mecole Hardman there too as well. So I feel like wide receiver would be kind of an odd move. But then again, I never would have guessed that the Lions would have taken a running back either. So,
Julian, it would have been perfect for the Packers to finally take a wide receiver when Aaron Rodgers had left, but they didn't do that.
Yeah, it would have been a nice troll as well as get yourself a nice player, because I think there are some good receivers. Jackson Smith and Jigba, obviously the big favorite to be the first receiver off the board. But I do want to quickly touch on, because I think the biggest surprise of the draft, which says a lot given the top 10 that we saw, the biggest surprise in the draft, the Detroit Lions, who have DeAndre Swift, who just got David Montgomery from division rival Chicago Bears.
Right.
Go with Jahmyr Gibbs at 12 in the first round. Jahmyr Gibbs, there was a point in time he was plus 300 to be a first-round pick. Obviously, that swung a lot. He was a heavy favorite to go, but we all thought, who's it going to be at the end of the round that grabs him? It's the Lions at 12. 2 running backs off the board before a receiver or a tight end goes. That is unique, to say the least.
I mean, Gibbs was like a fringe first-round pick to begin
Right.
with, so
Well,
for him to go
the odds
that
told us
high-
he was going to go.
Yes, but much later.
You would
in
think it would be like how, Clyde Edwards-Helaire
Yep.
scooped up by the Chiefs with the last pick.
Yep.
Something along those lines, but Lions in love with him.
Did the Patriots hate trade so that the Jets would not get one of the best tackles on the board there with Broderick Jones? Was that the move?
It very well could be.
Yeah.
It very well could be, because obviously, especially when you look at that division now, the Patriots are most certainly the weakest team in that division, so you don't want to make your opponents even stronger. But that was also a big need for the Steelers. They need to help protect Kenny Pickett. That was something they weren't able to do too well last year, so that definitely fills a huge need for the Steelers, because that's one of those teams that, kind of like Arizona, where I felt like they didn't have a ton of holes that they had to fill, but they had a few, and that was definitely one of them.
Julian, who nailed their pick so far, you think?
Yikes.
Who nailed their pick so far? I mean, Bryce Young at 1 works. I gotta look at the whole board.
Yeah.
Do we have the full board?
Well,
here?
sorry.
Now your notes come in handy.
After our
Give 'em to
notes,
me.
wow.
Good luck reading them.
How the turntables.
Here we go. I like what Seattle did, honestly, at corner.
Okay.
Getting
Yeah.
Witherspoon. I know that a lot of people thought that wasn't going to go that way. I like what the Colts did with going Richardson over Levis, which not a lot of people had. And I like what the Bears did, getting a guy that doesn't give up sacks to protect Justin Fields.
Yeah.
So I would say those are the teams that probably are the big winners.
Who's blown it so far?
I don't know, and one last one. I don't know if I like the Cardinals going offensive line at 6, but they got the guy they wanted and moved back up to
And got
do it.
more
And got
draft
picks
capital
and got
for
the guy
next
they
year.
would have taken at 3. So if you're going to think of it that way,
And just
Cardinals
one quick note on Seattle, too. I mean, they also have the reigning Defensive Player of the Year, Tariq Woolen, from last year, and then they get Witherspoon on top of that. Like,
Defensive Rookie of the Year,
yeah, excuse me, what did I say?
Player of the Year.
Okay,
A
same
little
thing.
bit of a stretch.
Same thing.
I think. I wasn't fully listening to you, so I
I
could
actually
be
probably
wrong.
said it right
That's
the first
pretty
time.
wild.
Needless to say, the coverage coming from Seattle has gone from a thing that opposing teams would pick on from, as recent as 2 years ago to probably being one of the more talented in the league.
Interesting that Jalen Carter was available pretty far down the board for the Eagles. Were you guys surprised by that?
I feel like Carter was really, it was going to be, because that was originally, he was the favorite for, I'm trying to throw it up here now, because
We can't even read
Yeah.
our own notes at this point.
with Seattle. That was good. That was the favorite there to go to Seattle, and obviously when those moves were made, then Carter was going to drop. Not dramatically, but there definitely weren't teams between the Lions and the Raiders, and ended up being Arizona, that were in need of that. So it really was kind of Seattle where he was going to drop, and that's really what ended up happening there.
What about
Will McDonald
we
to
got
the
Will
Jets.
McDonald to the Jets apparently.
Yeah, that's a weird. He was
weird pick here.
going to go way
down.
later.
Okay. What's our take on that
So
pick?
it's a defensive end,
Yep.
which is kind of a weird position. That you don't go offensive line to protect Rodgers, but you go on the D line with a guy that you like. If you could have moved back here, you could have gotten this guy later.
Yeah.
I probably would have said the same for the Lions too, taking Jahmyr Gibbs though, unless they know somebody else right behind them loved Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yep.
So unless somebody right behind the Jets loves Will McDonald and they know that, even if Will McDonald turns into a great player, they probably could have gotten him a little bit later.
It's almost like the curse of Aaron Rodgers continues. The Jets are already just following instead of what the Packers did and just not giving him what he needs and what he wants.
Well, he certainly has receivers.
Right. I'm sorry. He made his demands very clear. He's been reunited with his boys.
Yes.
Okay.
He does
fair
have
enough.
his receivers.
Yeah, fair enough. How surprised are you guys that Will Levis is still available here? I mean, this is another story of, you're talking about, we said we knew who was going one, obviously Bryce Young, and then it was kind of going to be a crapshoot after him and CJ Stroud. But are you surprised that he's still on the board here?
If the Colts, I mean, that's what it really was. If it wasn't going to be Houston, then it was most likely going to be the Colts. When the Colts ended up going with Richardson, that's when I think the free fall for Levis was really going to start.
So this is the smoke screens and the steam that comes onto bets. The market fell in love with Will Levis.
Because of Reddit.
And NFL teams just don't actually feel that way about him, it seems. So, and it kind of adds up. Like when Will Levis was a guy, they were like, oh, this is going to be a top 10 pick. This could be a top 5 pick. I was like, I didn't see that on the football field last year.
Right.
But I bought into it because that's what I was hearing. So it makes you feel kind of not great about yourself. But
Julian, it's okay.
This is I guess a lesson for next year to learn, maybe I say don't listen to yourself in drafts. Listen to the information.
Yeah.
But trust yourself a little bit. Maybe I'm learning this year because maybe these are smoke screens to try and get you to believe.
But
in
is
people.
it fair to say with next year's class that this will be a little bit more predictable than this year?
Probably.
This was crazy.
But it turns out, so we thought CJ Stroud might slide. It turns out all this Will Levis hype was maybe to clear up room for who you want to get, whether it be Stroud or Richardson, whoever in that top 5 in the end. And that's why all that Will Levis smoke was there, I would presume.
Really quick, just thoughts on the rest of the draft as we make our way through the rest of the first round.
I mean, truly, if Levis doesn't end up going to Tampa or Minnesota, I don't know if he's even a first rounder anymore.
So this is where teams start trading to the end of the first round to get them there and get them on that contract. So I'm curious to see where Levis goes. I'm curious to see if Hooker goes. And I'm curious when we start seeing receivers go off the board because we have not seen any.
We really thought that was going to happen a lot earlier than it is now because we're on pick 16, and I don't think Washington's going to take one. So what happens after that? Could be the Patriots at 17.
Man, that would be crazy. All right, good stuff. Steve, Buchanan, Julian, Edlow, everybody, thank you for watching DraftKings Pro Picks at Night presented by H&M's Spring/Summer Menswear Collection. It is available in-store and online at hm.com. Breezy styles for your spring and summer wardrobe.